Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1 o'clock, and today is Tuesday, December 10th, 2024, and I will call the meeting of the Douglas County Planning Commission to order. If people can please take their seats and cease conversations. Excuse me, if Ellie, excuse me. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Bryce, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now start with opening public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker on matters over which the Planning Commission has jurisdiction, supervision, or control. The Planning Commission wants to encourage the respectful consideration of all views by members of the public. If the content is willfully disruptive of the meeting by being irrelevant, repetitious, slanderous, offensive, inflammatory, irrational, or amounts to a personal attack, or interfering with the rights of others, the individual will be asked to stop speaking. In addition to opening public comment will also be taken on public hearing agenda items that are identified for possible action and closing public comment. If you plan to speak on a specific agenda item that is on the public hearing agenda and identified for possible action, then please provide your public comment when that agenda item is heard. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and control of the Planning Commission. Additional public comment periods may be allowed on individual agenda items at the discretion of the chairperson. It is requested that members of the public comment on those agenda items when they are considered. So we'll now start with opening public comment. I would note that item 2 is for presentation only, so if you do have comments, you can make that during opening or closing public comment. So please approach the podium, state your name for the record, sign in on the sign-in sheet, and we will begin your 3 minutes. Opening public comment.
Jim Slade, Chairman, Sustainable Growth Committee. The Growth Management Ordinance, GMO, was the result of the 2020 voter-approved Sustainable Growth Initiative, both of which had two main goals. One, to keep growth within the letter and intent of the master plan, both to retain our rural character and to make sure that infrastructure kept pace with growth. And two, to try to prevent the boom-bust cycle of development that can lead to outsized unemployment, foreclosures, and bankruptcies. The Growth Management Ordinance was negotiated by differing interests. Community development with the help of the DA's office, county commissioners, Sustainable Growth Committee, and developers, including the Douglas County Building Industry Association. Of necessity, it required compromise on all sides, which was challenging. In the end, the various parties tried to make sure that the GMO was reasonably fair to all different interests. Of course, from its approval in 2007 until today, the ordinance has had no effect whatsoever, due mainly to the Great Recession and later COVID. Let's be clear, though. The ordinance was meant to manage growth by controlling the amount and timing of development. Now that it appears that it might, for the first time, actually affect growth, it would be unwise to alter the ordinance to favor one group over other competing interests. It would also be contrary to the letter and intent of the compromise agreement. How is it that I think that I know the intent of the ordinance? Because I was there in the room where it happened, and no one else in this room was. We met every Friday at 7:30 in the morning at the Minden Inn for the better part of a year, hammering out the differences, making compromises, and trying to avoid further lawsuits. In the end, we felt that we had come up with the best possible solution. When it says on page 5 of the packet for this item, says, quote, through a court process it was determined to be a compounded growth rate. That is untrue. That was a contentious issue in our negotiations, not court-ordered, but ended up being part of the compromise. Also on page 5, looking at the declaration of the essential resources of the county that are affected by growth, it is clear that growth doesn't pay for itself, which has been well known for decades. Have our roads and traffic gotten better? No, they have gotten worse. Have our judicial facilities remained adequate? No, mainly due to excessive growth in the 80s and 90s. And now we need to spend $70 million or so to build a new judicial center. Has the quantity and quality of our water been affected by growth? Of course it has, which is why our aquifer continues to diminish and more wells go dry. So I urge the county and the commission to stick to the letter and intent of the growth management ordinance and not tinker with it to benefit one group to the detriment of others. The public has made it abundantly clear over the years that the vast majority want to retain our rural character. To facilitate more growth beyond the confines of the current ordinance would be contrary to that goal.
Thank you, and thank you for your work on this issue all through the years.
Good afternoon, Ellie Waller. I'm glad that you've been provided the entire South Shore area plan for reference. Thus my 55-page comment. The town center zoning and mixed-use overlay being addressed by you today affects future development and redevelopment opportunities. The boards and commissions website states, this is on Douglas County, the Douglas County Planning Commission is an advisory body to the Board of Commissioners and is responsible for providing advice on land use planning matters, reviewing development applications for compliance, and county plans and ordinances, including amendments to the Douglas County Master Plan and the Development Code. Maybe it's time to revisit and have some revision to your role now to include the South Shore Area Plan specifically. The area plan is not governed by the master plan. Please correct me if I'm wrong. At the very least, you would be providing recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners likened to reviewing development applications for compliance with county plans and ordinances in the valley. This would be an introduction to TRPA ordinances and would be a gap fill because we have no dedicated TRPA staff. Master plan language, where I interpret the area plan, is in TRPA's purview and not the master plan, is on page 32 in regions and community plans. Number 4, the Tahoe Basin region is under the authority of the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, although located partially in Douglas County. There are 2 community plans called area plans in the Tahoe Basin, which are under the 2012 Tahoe Regional Plan, South Shore Area Plan, and Douglas County Area Plan. Also on pages 152 to 153, for State Line, this involves working with casinos, resorts, and other property owners, Tahoe Visitors Authority, and Tahoe Chamber of Commerce in the State Line to implement the South Shore Vision and the South Shore Area Plan update. These efforts and partnerships will continue to diversify the economy. Where are the residents involved? Tahoe Township residents deserve better representation, in my opinion. I'm dumbfounded and outraged that the public most affected doesn't really know what's going to happen when these amendments come forward and possibly be approved. One town hall meeting doesn't cut it. If you were living in the South Shore Area Plan boundary, wouldn't you want to be part of the future planning efforts? Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Oh, wait, I still had 20 seconds. I agree 100%. I'm so embroiled in this. Ellie Waller, for the record, I believe 100% what Mr. Slade presented to you today. I moved to the Valley 5 years ago, and the first thing I did was read the growth management information. I'm a product of living near Clear Creek and the specific plan that continually gets violated because of design guidelines. With that said, that project may or may not have ever been approved. The growth management process needs to stay as is. Listen to the expert that participated. Thank you.
Additional public comment?
Hi, David Vogt. I'm a resident of that State Line area. I don't have anything prepared to speak to you about other than it seems like a really bad idea that people haven't been notified sufficiently about what the actual effects of this plan are going to be. your infrastructure is not sufficient to withstand an influx of another 1,000 or 1,500 or 2,000 people that you're potentially putting in there just from the increased in zoning alone, not to mention your roads, your water, everything doesn't seem to line up yet. I don't know why it is that we need to rush into this. Obviously, you can say we've been working on it for a long time, but I think it could be worked on longer, because as a resident, it seems like we're already compacted in this area, and that all we're doing now is focusing on commercial entities rather than the residents involved. I would urge you to be a little more concerned with the people that live there and what their feelings are and concerns are and needs are for this area before you make any decisions and pass it on to the BOCC. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Good afternoon, Donna Loskar. As not to waste any of the commissioners' time, I would just like to say that I agree 100% with everything that was said today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional opening public comment? Seeing none, I'll close opening public comment, and we'll move to the next item, which is approval of the agenda. This is for possible action. Approval of the proposed agenda. The Planning Commission reserves the right to take items in a different order, to combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and to remove items from the agenda or delay discussion relating to an item on the agenda at any time. I would like to note that the chair intends to combine agenda items 3 and 4 so that we can efficiently have a presentation and ask questions of the staff on those two items. There will be a time for public comment on the items combined. We will vote on those separately with the zoning text amendment and the zoning map amendment in items 3 and 4, but those items will be combined. Any members of the Planning Commission have questions, comments on the approval of the agenda? Is there a motion?
Move
Mr.
to
Chairman.
approve the agenda for today.
Second.
Dave Nelson moves to approve the agenda. Bryce seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved unanimously. We'll now move to approval of the minutes. This is for possible action, discussion to approve the draft minutes of the October 8th, 2024 meeting of the Planning Commission. Any corrections, observations, or comments on the minutes of the October 8th meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I was not here for that meeting, so I will abstain from voting.
Thank you, Bryce. Questions, comments, or a motion? Lori,
I move to approve the minutes.
is there a second?
Second.
Lori moves to approve the minutes, and Mark made a second on that motion. If there's no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So the vote would be 6 in favor, and Bryce would abstain on approval of the amendments. We'll now move to the first agenda item. This is for possible action. This is discussion to review and accept the Planning Commission Activities Report for calendar year 2024. Kate, you have prepared this agenda item, so if you'd like to make comments on this, and then we'll move to questions.
Thank you, Chairman Walder. Kate Morales O'Neill, Planning Manager, Community Development. And good afternoon, members and everyone in attendance today. Just to give a brief overview of the report, we did hold 10 regular meetings in 2024. No meeting was held in June due to a noticing error by the newspaper, and then again in November due to lack of agenda items. We had 6 zoning map amendments, 2 zoning text amendments, 1 master plan amendment, 8 subdivisions, tentative subdivision maps, 3 plan developments, 1 major modification to a plan development, 1 major variance, 2 special use permits, and 2 major design review applications. Those typically don't come to the Planning Commission, but the community director sent them to the Planning Commission, which, as the director, has a right to do, and those were regarding the 2 cell towers. These numbers do include today's meetings. And regarding the administrative hearing panel, so beginning in January of 2024, Community Development discontinued holding public hearings for tentative parcel maps. These applications are approved administratively, and code does not require a public hearing for these applications. Community Development staff and management determined that the hearings would no longer be held. Staff still provides noticing for the adjacent properties to the applicable parcels in any given tentative parcel map. And staff approved 6 tentative parcel maps in 2024.
Thank you very much, Kate. Questions of the Planning Commission for Kate? Maureen?
Thank you, Kate. Question, with tentative parcel maps, is there a size of a tentative parcel map that would come to the Planning Commission, or no?
Sorry, no, Commissioner Casey, no, tentative parcel maps are administratively done by staff.
Other questions that members of the Planning Commission have for the staff? Thank you, Kate. You've done an excellent job on this. I do want to acknowledge that you compiled all this, but we had a variety of other staff members who did the legwork on their individual projects, and I do want to recognize that we have an outstanding community development staff, and I appreciate very much the good work that they put in. Since this is for possible action, I will open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment on agenda item number 1, the activities of the Planning Commission?
Jim Slade, that sounded like quite a full year. I wasn't quite clear if those were the number of items that came before the board or that were approved. I would ask Ms. O'Neill if she would tell us, if she has this information, how many of those items that came before the board were denied versus how many were approved. Were all those ones approved or were some denied? I think that would be helpful to know. On each of those items that you listed, the master plan amendments, on and on and on, how many were approved and how many denied, if you have that information.
Thank you, Kate. Well, let's hold till other public comment is made on this item, and if you need to address those, you can at that time. Other public comment on agenda item number 1? Seeing none, then I'll close public comment. And Kate, did you have a response that you wanted to issue? I think the packet
Yes,
does go through
it
that
does.
in detail.
Yes,
but
so-
is there a summation that you'd like to give?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Walder, Kate Morales O'Neill for the record. Yeah, of all the items, this is in my staff report included in the packet, of all the items that required Board of Commissioners, all items except one, which was the Ranchos LLC project, was upheld by the board. Of late, that did go into court proceedings and a settlement was done, and the board just recently did approve that project based on the settlement agreement with the Ranchos LLC.
I think the question Mr. Slade was asking maybe, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, was what was the result of the Planning Commission's activities on the items that you mentioned. And I think you can see in some cases, some of the items were denied either on individual motions, and in other cases, they were approved by a divided vote. I think that's what Mr. Slade was looking for.
All of the items except one, so the Planning Commission approved all the items. I didn't, individually, you can go to each motion to see who, 3-1, 4-1, 5-2. Is that addressed? Okay. I know it's in.
Thank you, Kate. Any other questions that the members of the Planning Commission have on agenda item number 1? Okay, then we'll conclude and move to recommended motion, which is on page 14 of the packet.
Yes, I would move that, that we accept the 2024 Planning Commission Activities Report and forward it to the Board of Commissioners with the inclusion of the information for pending December agenda items.
Is there a second?
Second.
Dave moves approval of the Planning Commission Activities Report. Bryce seconds. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. We will now move to agenda item number 2. I'll read this into the record. This is for presentation only. Presentation regarding the current status of the Building Allocations and Growth Management Program, Douglas County Code Chapter 20.560, including building allocations issued to projects, subdivisions, plan developments, etc., and individuals from their respective allocation pools, vested subdivision projects, and Douglas County population change and additional activities by community development. This will be presented by the Community Development Director, Tom Delaire. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Walder. I appreciate it. Merry Christmas, everybody. So this is just a report. You guys have had this in the packet. Also, I've been corresponding back and forth with Kirk on a lot of this information as well. But basically, just a history on the ordinances that have gone through the county commission in order for this to be part of code. As it started in April 5th in 2007, where the growth management was added to Title 20. And then there was a resolution done in June 7th, 2007. So shortly after that original ordinance where they had established a 70-30 split between individual and project allocations. The individual ones allocations are what gets applied to a parcel map, and the project allocations get applied to subdivisions and projects. And so that is the difference between the two. There is one more called the vested, which is the vested list. And then in June, also in June, they established a list of subdivisions that were put on that vested list. And that's basically a project that was approved prior to this growth management ordinance being voted on. And so those are the 3 individual allocations that we are tracking. And we did go back and actually when I started, we are tracking how many vested homes are getting built in the county as well. In 2008, Sterling Ranch was added to the vested list, and then in 2009, we had the changes of code to establish the excess allocations of pools to allow their use at any time rather than quarterly, which we are doing today. And so I was wanting to, I just added these definitions because I thought they were kind of pertinent for the essential resources and facilities and services. And we are, we added drainage. Stormwater is now kind of a priority for the county. We do have a new department. It is general fund. And it was just recently relocated under community development because I am also the sitting floodplain administrator. And so they felt that that was a better fit and location for that department than in Public Works. And we still continue to watch the numbers on the schools. We also, community facilities, as you know, we're building a new justice center, as was mentioned earlier. And we're still trying to figure out this affordable housing issue, which basically the entire country is, as well as trying to deal with that issue as well. Water and sewer, we are going through, Public Works is actually working on a sewer master plan, or I think they will be here shortly for that, for our service area. And then also USGS is working on a report for the water resources, which we should have some updated information, I believe, at the next county commission meeting. If not, it'll be the second one in January, I think, is when they'll be coming to do a presentation on their progress. We have one more year under the contract with USGS for the water resources issue in this valley, and so we'll see where that's at. Also, Carson Subconservancy is working on a report as well to gather all of the entities' information on who's providing water and how much out of the aquifer. So they're doing a pretty good job at tracking all of that, and they are updating their report on that information right now. So that should be out next year as well. Some definitions that we talked about earlier. The individual pool is the excess allocations for the parcel map allocations, which if you build a house on some parcel that was created by a parcel map, that's the actual individual. And then the project pool, just because we need to talk about that in the next chart, is the allocations designated by the board for distribution to projects. So these are identified in the code as a specific number of allocations, and then with the 70-30 split, those allocations get split out into their category that's specific to either 70% in the individual or 30% in project. And as Mr. Slade mentioned earlier today, we haven't been keeping up with the growth management. It's just been the market has driven the market has driven the demand on the housing market in this valley, and so we haven't actually held any of these projects back from developing. I was corrected earlier on this slide, and it was through negotiations that the 2% was increased compounded annually. That was through some negotiations, and Mr. Slade brought that to my attention this morning. So sorry about that misinformation. And the first section, so this is out of the county code. We started off with 318. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor up there. This 317 is the very first one, and that was based on the 2000 census. I've done a deep dive on this and tried to figure out how we ended up with the actual dwelling unit count in our county, and we're working with the state demographer on his numbers, but that's how we started. This was 34,520 people as a population, and then they divided it by 2.5 people per dwelling unit, which was from the 2000 census that determined that we had 2.5 people living in each dwelling unit on average in Douglas County. And so that's how we ended up doing the calculations and the math to get that initial allocation number. And so today, it's highlighted in 2024, we had issued 444 allocations, and that was available for people to use. Today, also in 2020, in the census, that 2.5 people per dwelling unit is down to 2.34 people per household, and that's average based on the 2020 census. So these numbers from the state demographer are showing the county population at 55,000 people, just under 55,000 people, but the census is showing it just under 50,000 people. So there's a discrepancy, and I've charted that for you later in the slide, but I just wanted to make sure you guys are aware of that discrepancy as well. And then also, it's good to note that at year 25, so 2032, it's the 26th year in this chart right here on the bottom. The vested allocations, oh my gosh, the vested allocations are going to be converted into the project. So basically, any subdivisions that were vested, they had 25 years to build out, and if they don't build out, they roll into the project allocations at that point in time, if we still have the split by then. So we'll see what happens in the future with that resolution, but right now, we're counting on those projects that were built prior to the growth management ordinance being in place to roll into the project allocations pools or allocation category. So here's how we track it. It is an Excel spreadsheet. It is done manually. We don't have the software to do this, so we do check it regularly. Colleen's done a wonderful job at keeping up with this, but it is definitely time-consuming and tedious. But we did reduce the allocation, so the 444, right here is the line that we're on. 444 is reduced by 47%, and that's what's actually distributed. That distribution then is split between the individual pool and the project pool at the 70-30 split over here you can see that from the chart. So currently in the pool, we are 1,747 allocations that are in the pool. Those get issued before anything gets issued from the actual distribution for that particular year. So we have quite a few parcels to go on that need to be built in a parcel map parcel that was created. So those parcels have to be created by a parcel map in order for them to be used as an individual. And then we have 331 still remaining. And a few years ago, we were up to looks like 592 in 2020. And that you can see has been dwindling. So we have been building more than what's been distributed to that particular column, which is the project pool. And so that pool has been being reduced down every year based on the number of project homes being constructed. And then vested used so 70 this particular year out of the 208, which was the reduction. So we have basically counted 70 units for those homes to be actually built this particular year. But when you combine them all, we still have, we're basically at 51% of what's been issued when you combine all of those, the vested, the project, and the individual. So I put this in here just to show you an example. The North Douglas County, this is the project up off of Topsy Lane, north of Sunridge and south of Topsy. KDH is the builder. It's Ken Hendricks Builders, and he has all of these subdivisions. This one is a threeplex. This one's individual single-family homes, and this one's a smaller single-family homes, and they're moving along pretty good clip at building those. We do have on the viewer for the public to look at to show which subdivisions those are and how many units were approved and the total build out to date. So Colleen does keep that up to date with the GIS. And then also Colleen has created these tables. This table was updated from what's in the presentation that we presented. We had a number in the wrong row here, and so we fixed that this morning, and I updated my slide, but we also have it for the public out on the table. It's on 11 by 17. I gave you guys all one. It's a little easier to read, but basically what happens is you pick a subdivision in the vested list, and you can see how many homes are built throughout the year. We still have December to go. We'll do those number crunching at the end of the month, 1st of January, and get this sheet updated for the actual calendar year. And what happens here is you've got the number of approved units, we've got the lots that have been recorded, and then the number of units that have been actually built on. And then each month we track how many homes or permits were issued for that particular subdivision. And then at the end of December, we will fill that form out, and then that gets added. All of this whole row right here between January and December gets added to the lots built out in 2024. And so that's how we've been keeping track of this table. And then this is how many lots from what's been recorded, this is how many lots we have remaining. So I just want to make sure that was something that Mr. Slade had asked about earlier. I just want to make sure that was touched on. This one is the subdivision. So this is a project pool or the project list of all the subdivisions that are on here. And and when they were approved and how many there were, the number of units that were approved for, how many lots have been recorded. In this particular case on Ashland Park, there aren't any, so no building permits have been issued. They still have 190 remaining. So that's how this table is used as well. And then down here is the Tahoe subdivisions. We have Beach Club, Hunsinger, and Sierra Colina. Chairman Walder had asked about Peak Tahoe. That's the big concrete building that was built up at Tahoe, up on the right, is right on the line between TRPA and Douglas County. They had created their parcels in '97, but it wasn't part of the vested list. We gave them the option to come back to the county commission to put on the vested list or just pay for the allocations, and they elected to pay for the allocations, and these charts have been updated for that to happen. So there were, I think, 43 units up there that would be issued in that case. This is the highlighted area shows all of the developments that were in North Valley, the KDH projects that we showed earlier. So a simple calculation, we can just in Excel pick that window, and we have a total of 558 lots remaining, and there were 61 permits issued in KDH and North Valley this year so far. We still have December to go. And then this is basically a chart created when I got here. We've been keeping it up to date. It's a little more complicated, but I wanted to just kind of go over this for the public. But this is the overall allocations. The light green is the portion where the total allocation count. This is a reduction for the vested. So this is the area where the vested is reduced. And then it jumps up in 2031 to match the projects invested will go together. And then this is a curve because of that compounded annually. Right now, it's 444. A total of 329 permits are still in the pool for the individual pool. The black line is the combination of project, individual, and vested, which are the three lines here in the bottom. You can track how those have varied throughout the year. The darker blue is the, I believe, individual, project allocation. So it's a project pool. The dark green is the individual ones issued, and the lighter green is the vested issued. So you can see here, when you add those three numbers up, you get the black line is basically the overall. And we were close to hitting the actual line at 2% growth in 2021, but we didn't quite get there. We were a few short. But, and it's declined since then, I suspect because of the interest rates. And then here's the discrepancy on the population for Douglas County between the census and the state demographer. And then I put in here the projected population for based on the growth management ordinance. So our actual population matched pretty good. There was a column in the state demographer that wasn't quite there. That's the state demographer certified numbers back in 2003, 4, 5, all the way to 2011. And then the state demographer had some varying numbers based on this NVA. I can't remember what that actually stands for, but the state demographer comes up with two databases of populations and they didn't match. And so that's what's been plotted here on this chart. It matched pretty good until 2023, and now we're starting to deviate again. And then there's a projection that the census does for 5 years. That's how we got to the 2028. So the census is projecting a reduction in population, and the state demographer showed like a 6% growth. And I think this next year he's planning on a 10% growth, which isn't really accurate based on the number of units being constructed and the allocations that were built. So we're talking with him right now on how he's coming up with his numbers, and I think he's basing it all on the actual unit count, but he's got his population numbers, that 2.5 factor varying all over the county, and it's quite odd. So we're discussing that with him. I'm trying to get this clarified so I can get it clear in my mind on how he's moving forward, because it is quite different than the census. And this is just a cleaner chart, shows from 1970, all the population of Douglas County, the blue line. And then I added a couple of growths here annually on how things have happened. And then this is based on the state demographer data. We would be at 2.38%, but based on the allocation numbers and the census, it's actually 0.15% of growth. And so it is causing some issues with my chart and my OCD, actually. But and then this just shows basically what the master plan still projected growth based on the growth allocation. We did have in the master plan a projection of 1.2%, 1.04%, 0.5%, and then 0.1%. And those are all the options. And we're sitting here right now. This is the actual blue line on where we landed, but there's still a large difference between population from what the growth management ordinance has in place versus what our projection, our various projections in the master plan showed. And then some interesting facts about this. I added this based on some information that back and forth questions from Chairman Walder. But the fee for an allocation, it is increased to $463.84. That's with the tech fee. The actual allocation costs $446. And that's what everybody pays in addition to the building permit in order to get an allocation in Douglas County. It does cover all manufactured homes, accessory dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, and apartment complexes. The heritage parcels are exempt, which I think we haven't used a whole lot of those over the past 15 years, but they are exempt, and we do track that as well. The allocations do expire after 1 year of being issued, so if you come in and say you're going to build an accessory dwelling unit and you want to add an allocation, you can buy it, hold it, but if you don't get it permitted within a year, it goes back into the process and you have to buy it again. And there is an allocation certificate generated in our software for each unit, and it's similar to like a certificate of occupancy. Some other numbers just based on some questions that Chairman Walder had asked. In the last 5 years, manufactured homes, there has been 23 permitted. 133 homes have been rebuilt in the last 5 years. And then storage containers, I just wanted the public to know this, that storage containers require a minor design review. They're allowed on half acre to RA10, and then you can have a number of them on the ag parcels or the forest and range, but you don't have to go through that process. It's really limited to this SFR half acre and 10. Tiny home option is coming. You guys will be hearing that a little bit later today. The state is dictating that we have to have that as an option. Currently, our homes need to have a garage and 400 square feet, 20 by 20 minimum. With some architectural standards, and so right now we're still working on those standards for the tiny homes, but right now we just need to get into place the requirements from the state, which is where they're going to be able to be installed, and that's what you guys will talk about later today. Fences, if you're going to build a fence, you can go to 7 feet tall. That's based on the building code. That was modified 2 years ago based on the actual IBC and the IRC. They allow fences up to 7 feet tall without a permit. And then, but you do need a permit for water heaters, furnaces, windows, roofs, siding, electrical over 25 volts. And if you redo any plumbing or electrical also is included in there, you should get a permit. It's over the counter. It's pretty quick and easy. This is the list of things that our department's still working on. The transfer development rights, that has finally picked up ground, and we're moving forward on that. We have a meeting this week with the team and hopefully bring back something to the TAC committee to review, and then on to you guys and then the commission. once we get that looked at. But we're working on getting that complete. The consultant is working on those proposals. TDR tracking and overhaul, that's, Kate has worked with AJ quite a bit extensively this year on trying to get those numbers cleaned up. And we're trying to get that information on the GIS viewer as well, so we can see where those TDRs have been created and where they're being used. And so we're having some difficulty finding that information to get on where they've been used. South Shore Area Plan, of course, Muller Parkway, Virginia Ranch, I'm working specifically with Alderman Ditch Company on that crossing. Muller Parkway is coming. Virginia Ranch will be building that, and we're partnering with their project contractor to actually do the crossing at between Perry's piece and Virginia Ranch's piece. So Douglas County is responsible for the crossing of the Virginia Ditch, and we've had some issues with the the Alderman Ditch Company there that we're working through those issues and trying to address his concerns. We've acquired some property along the Pine Nut Creek, which was identified in the Stormwater Master Plan. Jeremy continues to work on acquiring more land and also creating a larger stormwater basin in there so that we can actually reduce the amount of floodwater coming into the valley. The county strategic plan has been created. You can see the new flyers here. There's a lot more detail to that strategic plan, which we're working on in the background, and we're getting a plan put together to share with everybody all these projects and how we're tracking that product or that project specifically through the next 5 years. And the Title 20 update, we have a couple consultants on the books that are helping us with some specific sections of that. That is moving forward, not as fast as I would like it, but it is moving forward. And then we're looking at replacing Acela software. That should be coming forward through IRC and the board in the next couple of months. This large scanning project, we were awarded some ARPA funding back in the day. We have scanned all the building permits that were in the basement, and I'm pretty sure we've got all the ones out in the storage facility, but we're working on all the planning documents, which takes a lot more time because of the color and the size of the maps that are being scanned. But that has slowed the project down, but we are getting that accomplished. And Betty's been managing that and doing a great job at keeping up with PDI on that one and making sure the next round is ready to go when they need it. Andrea is working with NV Energy on a street light at Mica and Vista Grande, and then working with the HOA on a land transfer in Indian Hills and Valley Vista 7 that will close out 2 more development agreements, which we desperately want to close out. And we just had a float in 2020, or in the Parade of Lights this year. It was pretty fun. It was nice to have all of the staff together working on that. There's a lot of support, and I really appreciate staff's time on Saturday to get that thing decorated and actually ride it through the parade. It was a lot of fun, and this is our budget performing measures. So if you guys have any other option or ideas that we could actually measure our performance in community development, I'm open to those conversations. Currently, this is what we're tracking. It's basically these numbers here, which is the total permits with the whole division, 2,500 in 2019 and 3,165 last year. And then building permit specific. These include all of the water heater permits and the re-roofs and the re-siding, but 1,921 permits in 2019 and 2,505 in 2023. So you can see the trends there over the last 5 years or 4 years going upward, of course. And we're on track to even beat those numbers by a few this year. So that's time to wake up. Sorry it wasn't as quick as you thought, Kirk, but
Thank you very much, Tom. You covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time, and it was very informative. And I do also want to recognize Colleen's contributions to this. She works tirelessly, and it's mind-numbing, but thank you very much, Colleen. You've done an excellent job on this. And I did want to note the additional materials that you also submitted on page 59 and 60 with your goals and your achievements for goals and achievements for 24-25. That was excellent. I don't think we need to cover that ground here now in the discussion. I hope we can talk a little bit more about the growth management ordinance, but you prepared a very good document for the Planning Commission and hopefully the Board of County Commissioners to review as well. So let's open it up for questions now for Tom on any of the materials that he presented. And I'll just go by people raising their hand with questions that they'd like to make. Then we'll come back for observations or closing comments before we finish this agenda item. But thank you again, Tom. Excellent job. Questions from members of the Planning Commission? Maureen.
The rollovers from the previous year, once those go into the next year, they stay there until they're allocated, correct?
Yeah, we actually pull from this, we're just pulling from these numbers here until those go to zero, then we'll start. There is some code provisions for them, for the contractor or the developer to apply to community development, say, hey, I need 20 more houses in the next quarter, and then it'll be a quarterly process. But until the pool goes away, we won't be able to implement that because there are units available.
And the only way we could get rid of the rollover is if there is a change in the ordinance, correct?
Well, I think it has to go to the voters for that change of anything in the ordinance, but yeah, I don't know how you get rid of the rollover when we actually in code have tabulate, put in a table how many units are allowed.
And the only ones who can bring that to the voters is the Board of Commissioners, correct?
I believe that's what the ordinance does say, yes.
Thank you, Maureen. Other questions by members of the Planning Commission? Mark.
So Tom, if I'm looking at your chart here, and we're looking at the project allocations, we will, if growth continues, eventually run out of those project allocations, right? It seems like we have more than we would ever use in individual allocations.
Yeah, I've asked GIS to give me some numbers on how many parcels are out there that were developed in a parcel map. They're working on that request information right now to see, as far as the project allocation pool, we have 329, and we have more parcels that have been created on the books today than that number. So I think it's just a matter of how fast they can get those built. And right now we're running around 120 to 150 units a year for the last couple of years. So it'll take a couple of years for that pool, this pool, the 329, to be depleted.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions from the Planning Commission? Lori, Paul, Bryce, Dave? Okay. I had a couple of questions and observations that I wanted to go over with you, Tom. First of all, you presented a lot of good data on population, and that was the real goal of the growth management ordinance. Shake your head, Jim, or Dave Brady. I did want to acknowledge Dave Brady is here, and I believe he was a county commissioner at the time, and he worked with Jim Slade's organization to come up with a growth management ordinance. But I do want to recognize his contributions as well. But so the growth management ordinance, and you presented from very good information about population. It was designed to control population, but the mechanism that was used was housing to control population. And we know that's not a perfect correlation. I think some of the confusion that the state demographer might have, I don't want to make a supposition, but he's looking at population based on perhaps housing numbers, when we know that there are sometimes second houses, there are sometimes third houses, where the population of Douglas County may not be a full-time population. People may be here for a week, a month, half of a year, and they don't add to the same drain on resources as full-time residents. So when we're looking at housing and control of population, that's sometimes a difficult equation to come to grips on. And I also agree with you, Tom. The calculations that I started doing on dwelling units and the census population, which I think is a much more accurate. I don't know how the demographer gets his numbers. He doesn't certainly go door to door and find out how many people are living in a household. But I think we could be down in Douglas County at less than 2 people per dwelling unit. It's just it's not a normal, in my view of what normal building and normal growth might be in an area, because we have people who are here part-time more than other areas in the country. So that's just my observations there, and I think you presented very good data. I also want to point out, and you mentioned this a couple of times too, when you look at the population of Douglas County, you almost always are looking at the entire population of Douglas County, which includes Tahoe Township. But as you pointed out, the growth management ordinance specifically excluded the areas that are under TRPA's jurisdiction, which includes most of Tahoe Township, but as we saw the anomaly with Peak Tahoe, they pulled 43 allocations that would ordinarily go to homes or dwelling units in the Carson Valley. And certainly I think I know that area, and I think I know the county, that they're not going to be a drain on any of the resources that you mentioned on page 33 of the packet. Those are units that will drain resources from Tahoe, not drain resources from Carson Valley. So I think that's an important observation to everybody to be clear about as we look at growth management in Douglas County. The growth management is Carson Valley growth management. I don't want to accuse Mr. Slade or Mr. Brady of not thinking that growth was important in Tahoe, but certainly the problem that I think you were dealing with at the time was the explosion of growth in Carson Valley. I don't think Tahoe has ever experienced an explosion of growth like was experienced in Carson Valley. So I think that's the point that I wanted to make. There are anomalies that come into play that I think we all should be aware of. A couple of other questions or observations that I wanted to make. On the allocation table that you put up on page 37, Tom, which you have the larger version there, that's the smaller version, yeah. The one thing I did want to call note of is the percentages that you calculated. First of all, on the fourth line down, the total allocation for the year, and you use the word issued, I think a better word is allowed. So we were allowed 444 building allocations in 2024, and that would be the 2% growth if we hit all of those, 2% over the previous year. But the actual permits issued, the 228, is only 51% of the allowed. So for calendar year 2024, and we're not done with that, obviously December will be some smaller numbers, but we're only hitting 51% in this year of the 2%. So we're a little over 1% growth. Am I wrong on those kind of explanations of how that analysis works?
No, that's accurate, and apologize for not changing the word.
That's okay. There's a number of terms in here that can be confusing because when people start to talk about building, we talk both in terms of allocations and we talk in terms of building permits.
Right.
And in most cases, you need both. In some cases, as in the vested projects, you do not need an allocation, but you do need a permit.
Right.
And then you did respond to some of the things that I asked about, and one of them I think does bear noting to everyone and putting on the record is there is a fee for an allocation. So we not only have the allocation fee of about $464 per allocation, but then you have the building permit fee, which is based on square footage. Am I correct there, Tom?
Yep.
And when I ran the numbers, it looks like in 2024, the allocations alone netted Douglas County about $95,000. Would that be ballpark? I think when I multiply that out?
I think based on your numbers, it was ballpark, yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't go back, I don't know when the fee started for the allocations in 2007 or how much that fee was, but if you look over the course of the 18 years of the growth management ordinance, that's a pretty pretty large chunk of change. Could be even into the millions of dollars that we've collected for allocation fees for the growth management ordinance.
Yeah. It goes right into the general fund.
It goes right into the general fund. But it does pay, and I think I'm a big proponent of this, and I think you are, Tom, and I know the county managers too. We need to pay for the services we render.
Right.
And if the county is rendering a service by tracking allocations and tracking projects and individuals and going through all of those parts of the equation, the county should be paid for it. I mean, we don't give away our service. We shouldn't give away our services for nothing.
Right.
So I did want to call people's attention to that growth management ordinance works. I think those are the general observations that I had at this point, Tom. Did I raise anything that other people wanted to respond to or follow up on? Maureen?
I have one last thing that I'd like to say, and I'd like to ask the grace of the Planning Commission to support me in this. In Section B, Tom, you brought up that it states, the board finds and declares the following essential resources, facilities, and services will be considered for the managed growth of Douglas County, and you list a number of items. And then in 20.560.070, it determines how the calculation of allocations will be held. And I think that considering that growth is an issue that PC and the BOCC hear about on a regular basis, and the problems with infrastructure, roads, water, and sewer are not going away anytime soon, we have a lack of funds, we have age, we have the lack of staff to make the repairs, we have a no tax mentality here in the valley, or in the county in general. We have a legislature that does not want to raise taxes. I think that it would behoove us to have an agenda item here at the Planning Commission to discuss whether or not it is prudent as a planning board to send a recommendation after discussion and review of the growth management ordinance to send our personal recommendation as a board to the board, I've said that before, that they put an advisory vote on the ballot whether or not the voters here want to make a change to the growth management ordinance to remove the rollover. I think it would be very prudent. It would help our staff if they don't have to track it. It would reduce the number of permits and allocations that can be issued. It would slow the number of units that could be built over the next 20 years. I I just think it's prudent to have the discussion, and the board can make the final decision as to whether or not they think it's a good idea. But considering all the obstacles that are coming up before the county, community development, and the voters over the next few years, it's our responsibility to have this discussion. And I want to hear what the rest of the Planning Commission has to say about it.
Thank you, Maureen. I think that's an excellent observation and analysis. I think having an agenda item at a future Planning Commission meeting would allow us to entertain a lot of the points that you made, weigh the pros and cons, offer observations, recommendations. That's, in my view, what the Planning Commission should be all about, recommending our viewpoints and alternatives to the Board of County Commissioners and giving them the benefit of the wisdom that we have. So I would support that as an agenda item in the coming year. Dave?
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be here to support you on that, but I would if I was here.
Lori?
Yeah, I support that concept as well. I think we've lived with the growth management ordinance for 18 years. I think it's always prudent to come back and revisit your regulatory statutes and make sure that they're still following up on the intent and the desire of the community that they were intended for. I think it's a great idea to come and have a discussion of it, regardless of how the commission, what recommendation we arrive at. I think having that discussion is very valuable and would be very beneficial for the community as well.
Thank you. Other thoughts or observations? Paul?
Considering what we heard earlier in the citizens' commentary, particularly Mr. Slade, I think that after 18 years, it's appropriate to review the parameters that exist now as distinguished from what existed at the time this particular ordinance was put in place. There's no better way to do so than before the Planning Commission with respect to the proposition that Commissioner that Maureen gave to us, and I think that I endorse that tremendously. We could also hear then from those from years past about the differences that they see and they perceive. I think it would be very, very helpful.
Thank you. Other thoughts or observations? Mark?
Well, I agree 100% with you. I guess before I would have anybody look at that, I'd ask AJ whether or not this thing can be changed.
AJ, the question that Mark is posing is, can the ordinance be changed? And would the Planning Commission play a role in making recommendations for changes to the Board of County Commissioners? Is that your question, basically, Mark?
Yeah. Can it be changed?
Yeah, AJ Hames from the Douglas County District Attorney's Office. So the ordinance itself identifies or differentiates between the types of changes that can be made by the board and then changes that have to be approved by a vote of the residents of the county. So this is chapter 560 of Title 20, section 070D states that, C, any modification in the total number of allocations or a modification in the 2% growth rate must be placed on the ballot by the county for an advisory vote prior to implementation or any modification. So if you're going to tinker with the growth rate or the allocations prior to taking action, there has to be a vote by the people. It has to be placed on the ballot for an advisory vote. So that's not a final action by the people, it's just an advisory vote. Then there are changes that can be made to the ordinance regarding procedure and how things are distributed and things of that nature. Those can be handled without the advisory vote.
Thank you, AJ. Bryce?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask the same question that Mark did. I'm all for putting something out there and getting public input and making recommendations. At the same time, I'm not interested in exercising futility. So if we're not permitted to have a discussion, or there's no point in having a discussion regarding allocations or rollovers, if at the end of the day, there's nothing that this body can do.
Thank you, Bryce. If everybody has made comments that they'd like to make, I do have some concluding comments before we close this agenda item. Tom, again, excellent presentation, and I thank you for your contributions. And again, Mr. Brady and Mr. Slade, your contributions over the years have been excellent, and with the county's best interests in mind. So we thank you for that. I would like to note that in the 18 years the Growth Management Ordinance has been operating, not a single request to build a house has been denied. While the restricting growth to a promised 2% was perhaps a noble goal at the time, both the ordinance and market forces have actually produced a growth level of perhaps 0.5%. Several components of the Growth Management Ordinance, to me, are particularly flawed. One, it attempts to control population growth by restricting the building of houses. In fact, there's not a perfect correlation between the number of houses built and the increase in population. If building is restricted to 300 houses, but those 300 homes are 5 and 6 bedroom homes, that would result in greater population than if the houses are 2 and 3 bedrooms. Two, the Growth Management Ordinance justifies restrictions with the need to ensure adequacy of a number of important resources like water, roads, and public safety. A valid objective, but the Growth Management Ordinance does nothing to direct building to places where resources exist or geographically restrict growth in resource-scarce areas. Right now, all building allocations in a single year could go to one location, say North County, without any check on available resources. Three, the assumption that vested projects would fill 40% of the overall allocations was wildly wrong. In actuality, vested projects have only consumed 20% of homes built, and the 70-30 split of remaining allocations between individuals and projects was similarly incorrect. Projects currently build at about twice the rate of individuals. Four, language in the Growth Management Ordinance attempted to incentivize affordable housing and building on certain agricultural parcels, but has been ineffective. In the last 18 years, only 58 homes in the affordable or agricultural exemptions have been built, an average of 3 per year. My final point, made in the spirit of Planning Commission's requirements in the master plan, which is page 314 of the master plan, to, quote, report annually on the effectiveness and possible improvements in the Growth Management Ordinance, is that restrictions imposed on project building may, somewhere around 2028, severely and unwisely prevent needed home building, all in the name of limiting growth to 2% per year, which we have never come close to reaching. So with that, I'll close this agenda item, and we will move to agenda item 3 and 4. As I indicated at the start of the meeting, we're going to combine agenda items 3 and 4. So I will read these two agenda items into the record, and then Kate will make her presentation on both agenda items. And as I also noted, if people will be observant that we have two propositions that will be before us in these two agenda items. One is the zoning text amendment, and that's ordinance 2024-1642, and then the zoning map amendment, and that's ordinance 2024-1643. So first, item 3 is for possible action, discussion on ordinance 2024-1642, a zoning text amendment. This is DP 24-0162, amending chapter 20.703 of the Douglas County Code relative to Tahoe area plan regulations to implement proposed changes in the South Shore area plan by revising signage regulations within the T-MU/TC in T-T/HDT overlay zoning districts, and updating references to the TRPA Code of Ordinance. The SSAP covers properties generally along US 50 from the California-Nevada state line to the lower Kingsbury area and are zoned as tourist, recreation, resort recreation, and mixed use. The applicant is Douglas County, represented by Kate Morales O'Neill. Excuse me. Then number 4 for possible action. Discussion on ordinance 2024-1643, a zoning map amendment, DP 24-0180, changing the zoning for a certain property within the South Shore Area Plan by classifying the entirety of 201 Manor Drive, APN 1318-23-401-019, comprising approximately 4.54 acres as T/MU Tahoe mixed use with a TC Town Center overlay. The SSAP covers properties generally along US 50 from the California-Nevada state line to the lower Kingsbury area and are zoned as tourist, recreation, resort recreation, and mixed use. The applicant is Douglas County, represented by Kate Morales O'Neill. Kate, you are on for a presentation on both of these items, and then we will entertain questions from the Planning Commission on both items. Then we'll go to public comment on both items, and then we'll come back to the board for deliberation and action.
Thank you, Chairman Walder. Kate Morales O'Neill for the record. I am not one to read from script, but I do feel it's necessary at this stage because I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. I know how confusing this item can be, so if you bear with me here. Prior to starting my PowerPoint presentation, I would like to clarify what items I am presenting today, which are the zoning text amendment and the zoning map amendment. Also included in your packet are a few documents for reference only. Those are the new version of the South Shore Area Plan proposed, the current version of the South Shore Area Plan document, and the initial environmental checklist. From someone who has been working on some of the content in relation to these items for over 2 years and had to learn to navigate the ins and outs of how to process an amendment to the South Shore Area Plan, I can tell you I completely understand how confusing this process may seem. The South Shore Area Plan is a Douglas County document, but any change to it has to be adopted by TRPA in order to become effective. Douglas County is the actual applicant, and TRPA is the governing agency. The Planning Commission has authority to approve or deny the zoning text amendment and the zoning map amendment. However, pursuant to Title 20, Chapter 20.703.310, any amendment to a plan or ordinance contained within an approved area plan approved by the board shall be forwarded to TRPA and reviewed by the TRPA Advisory Planning Commission and the TRPA Governing Board for conformity with the requirements of the TRPA Regional Plan. Thus, the revisions to the South Shore Area Plan document, including the amendment to include the chapter on the energy conservation strategy, will be presented to the Board of County Commissioners for approval and then proceed to TRPA for review and adoption. In addition, similar to how Douglas County requires applicants to provide certain documents with an application, for instance, a traffic study, TRPA required Douglas County, again, as the applicant, to provide an initial environmental checklist document. This document is required to determine any environmental impact. Douglas County contracted with environmental specialist Ascent Environmental to complete the IEC. The IEC initially included the current amendments being brought forward now, as well as a height amendment and creation of a healthcare subdistrict. Barton Health proceeded to be a co-applicant with the county. However, TRPA has since required a more sophisticated environmental study, and those amendments have been postponed to future meetings. The county will not incur any costs associated with the new environmental analysis study, and the county has fully executed our contract with Ascent. This does not change the need of the IAC for the amendments the county is now bringing forward. The IAC is in draft form since review of the IAC has not been completed by TRPA staff. Once completed, final IEC will be presented. I felt it was important to explain this process and to ensure we stay within the authority granted to all of you. Again, I know this can be convoluted and somewhat confusing, but I hope I have created some clarity. Okay, so now on to my presentation. Are there any questions before I begin regarding what I just shared with you?
What was the IEC standing for?
We don't take questions from the audience. You can make your comments in public comment. If there are no questions from the Planning Commission members, then we'll move forward with your presentation. Thank you, Kate.
Okay, and I will clarify, IEC stands for Initial Environmental Checklist. So as I have stated previously, I have been working on this project since I started with the county over 2 years ago. And when I say started on this project, it's not specific just to these amendments, but to learn the ins and outs of TRPA and Douglas County and the relationship and who does what. It sounds easy, but it's really hard to kind of put your head around. But I have been literally working on this for 2.5 years. I think we met with TRPA within the first weeks I was here. TRPA asked us to proceed with amendments that had never been brought forward. These are 2 of them. They also would like us to bring forward the Tahoe Douglas Area Plan, which is something that we have contracted with and will begin working on. That is a large area plan. Again, that was brought forward, but it was never brought to TRPA. Now that plan has been 10 years plus, we're going to kind of start over, so to speak, and that will involve workshops and so on and so forth for the Tahoe Douglas Area Plan. Let me start with a map of what the South Shore Area Plan is. So it encompasses properties such as Edgewood, the Casino Core, and the Kingsbury Town Center in the high-density tourist district along Highway 50 from State Line to Lower Kingsbury, and includes various zoning, namely tourist, recreation, resort recreation, and mixed use. The South Shore Area Plan was adopted in 2013 and is part of the TRPA Regional Plan. The South Shore Area Plan replaced the Kingsbury and State Line community plans and the relevant plan area statements. These previous plans were over 20 years old and had undergone minor changes. So the South Shore Area Plan document itself in comparison is a newer document at only 11 years old. County staff is proposing a zoning text amendment and a zoning map amendment relative to the South Shore Area Plan. So the proposed South Shore Area Plan, the revisions and the amendments included for you today, expand the Kingsbury Town Center, the South Shore Area Plan boundary to include the entirety of the Kingsbury Manor Mobile Home Park. Presently, the mobile home park is partially within and partially outside of the town center and the South Shore Area Plan boundary. Revising signing regulations within the mixed use, the town center, and the high-density tourist district overlay zoning districts, and updating references to the TRPA Code of Ordinances. These are like tongue twisters today. I've never had to read so many words starting with the same letter. Finally, the incorporated energy conservation strategy and continue to encourage environmentally beneficial redevelopment in the plan area. This does not require any change to Douglas County Code. But it is noted, since it's one of the amendments to the actual South Shore Area Plan document, And as stated in opening, this is not being heard by the Planning Commission. Regarding the proposed boundary extension, so you can see here the dark areas, the two dark areas, the long vertical and two vertical. There's one here and then one down below. That is what's currently within the South Shore Area Plan, and then the rest of that parcel with the yellow is what is currently outside of the South Shore Area Plan boundary. So this boundary expansion was approved by the board in January of 2015, but as noted in the staff report, it was not taken before TRPA, the APC board, nor their governing board for review and adoption. So it, in essence, was ineffective. With the zoning consistency, if this ZMA is approved, we can see the additional uses that would be allowed that are not currently available on the portion of the property outside of the town center. It is also important to note that the owner has not at all indicated they are interested in redevelopment of the property at this time. If they choose to redevelop in the future, the higher density use could potentially provide much needed employee housing or attainable housing needs that I project are not going away for quite some time. This zoning map change still retains mobile housing on the property with limited density, or can also provide a public facility or cultural center. There is no way to project what the owner may or may not bring forward in the future, but staff believes the owner should not have inconsistent zoning on the parcel, making any type of redevelopment in the future very challenging. As mentioned previously, the South Shore Area Plan was adopted in 2013. It absorbed the Kingsbury and State Line community plans. These plans previously followed the standards in the Lake Tahoe Design Standards and Guidelines. This is a snippet of the front page of that document. The South Shore Design Standards and Guidelines replaced the Lake Tahoe Region Standards, and the Stein Standards were included in Title 20, Section 20.703180. I did not include that document in the packet because it is another 190 pages, and there is only certain pages that are relevant to today. So certain sign standards from that document, from this document, the Lake Tahoe Region Design Standards Guidelines, were inadvertently omitted and were not included in the new design standards nor in Title 20. These standards are on page 75 through 78 of your packet, G through J, and this zoning text amendment incorporates them into the Title 20 703.180. In addition, this amendment includes a modification to 20.703.180F, allowing revolution for electronic messages from 4 cycles to 12 cycles per hour. An example of positive take on this modification is ability to disseminate information more frequently, for instance, informing traffic of available parking during an event. You can imagine sitting there in revolutions if it's only every 15 minutes. If you're having something at the Tahoe Event Blues Center and there's the parking lot's full, whatever it might be, you can just disseminate information much quicker with more frequency allowed in the electronic messaging. So in conclusion, Douglas County believes that the findings to the zoning text amendment and the zoning map amendment can be met and recommends approval to the Board of County Commissioners. I want to thank you for your time, and I imagine I'm going to have some questions that I'm happy to address.
Thank you very much, Kate. We appreciate your presentation and appreciate the work that you've done on all of these issues, and then some, over the past several years. So questions from members of the Planning Commission for Kate. Lori, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate, for explaining a very long staff report in the packet very succinctly. I have a question about, first off, the mobile home park. That, in your view, was that simply an error for why that was misaligned, or was that an intentional alignment?
No, I do not think that was intentional at all. We really don't know. None of us were here at that time. I have talked to previous staff, and just because I was curious, wondering why it didn't move forward to TRPA, and they really couldn't remember what had happened. I kind of think because it's taken this long also, it could have been just staff turnover. And it just, if one person goes and another one comes in, I know the county's been working on this for a few years, and then staff turnover, and in I come, and they caught me before I left.
Then I see this this comment from the Kingsbury GID. I'm not quite sure I understand that the parcels are outside of their district. I don't understand.
Yeah,
why
that
they're
came in late. That just came in. I was still trying to, wrap up, preparing for the meeting, but I did tell him I would include his comments.
Right.
I think my comment to him is, I'm not sure I quite understand,
Yeah.
but this is a zoning map amendment. It is not a use or a
Right.
project, so,
And this doesn't change their district boundaries by changing this zoning.
I don't
Overlay.
have the GID for that. I don't have that map in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can't
don't-
imagine it would modify
No,
a
it
different
shouldn't.
jurisdictions.
I think Tom
Agencies
Delaire has an
want it.
answer for us regarding that map.
Tom Delaire for the record. Yeah, no, this would not change the Kingsbury GID's boundary
Right.
at all. Mm-mm.
I don't think there's an impact there.
Right.
The other question I had was on your sign amendments. Do you know how many signs, since it was inadvertently omitted from the text of the modified area plan, do you know if any signs were approved in that area since 2013?
I don't know the number of signs that were approved. I do know that once if this is approved, in my discussions with TRPA, and when we do our code update, this might be another section that we look at. But the important part, and an example is, I think it was included in public comment regarding a property in state line that feels that they should be able to do, if they build a casino, do a new casino sign. And that's why these are relevant, because you would not be able to do that because these standards never went away. They just weren't included
Right.
in the South Shore Area Plan. They were still in the community plan document. So that's why it's relevant to ensure they're now in code. But I can't tell you over the years how many have been
Okay.
approved. That would
And
be, I don't know that.
Would the county have approved those, or would TRPA have approved the
We
signs?
would approve the sign, so the TRPA reviews the sign permits in the basin.
Okay.
So we
okay.
both, yeah.
All right, and so the standard you would have used would have been the standard that was in the Lake Shore document?
Well, no, we would have referenced these standards just because they were omitted into our code doesn't mean they still weren't there.
Okay.
So TRPA, we've referenced those standards are being included in our code today. Because it was still, that community plan, those design standards, this
Yeah,
document.
right.
Round Hill is still in existence and uses this document.
Okay.
Once we move forward with the Tahoe Douglas area plan, this entire document would then cease to exist because Round Hill would be part of the Tahoe Douglas area plan.
I see. So signs now that there shouldn't be any new non-conforming signs
Correct.
based on this change.
Correct.
So this change is simply putting into the text of the plan the standards that have been enforced at least since 2013.
Correct. There are no new standards. I think that's,
Except the cycle.
that's the, except
Yeah.
the cycle. And
Okay.
I think that's the difference, is they aren't new, and I could see how it could be perceived that way.
Right, thank
But
you
they
so
are new.
much. Okay, that's all.
Not to add the further complication, as Kate alluded to, what we're essentially doing with the South Shore Area Plan, and then we will eventually do with the Tahoe Douglas Area Plan, is replace, I believe, 35 area plans that were the master plans for Tahoe Township. Long overdue, and this is one small step for man.
For mankind and Kate. Kate Morales O'Neill again, just for the record. I do want to clarify, because I think this is important and it's for you and also for the public. The South Shore Area Plan document itself, the Energy Conservation Amendment, is what we are adding as a chapter, and that is what was omitted, or we put it through our boards, but it was not taken to TRPA. So it's an important piece of the South Shore Area Plan. The other revisions or amendments to the document are updating spelling, reformatting, adding chapters. You can see if you compare the documents, it's apple and oranges. And then we updated sections and expanded information. For example, the Tahoe Blue Event Center. That section, if you compare the two sections, we didn't change anything, we just updated information. So where we expanded and updated information, we didn't change the document or change use elsewhere. That could happen in the future, and that's when more workshops, so on and so forth, would come into play. But for what is happening right now and what we are bringing forward, and the energy conservation strategy, staff does not feel we're not overhauling the document. Although it looks like it was overhauled because it looks so different, we simply reformatted, created chapters, and it's something that's been worked on for quite a few years as far as the formatting and the chapters and organization of the document. So I just want to make that clear too, because the red line could be deceiving, but if you compare it, it's really just updating and expanding information, correcting spelling. So I just wanted to make that clear too. I think that's important.
Thank you, Kate. Other questions from members of the Planning Commission? Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question. I just want to commend you for the work. Not only the work you did here, which I was about 90% there, and you got me the 10% over the hump with your summarization. So I just wanted to say thanks, because it does appear a lot more complicated than it actually is.
Thank you, Bryce. Other questions or observations at this point? Just two things, Kate, that I would like to have you help me elaborate on. The map that you have on page 65, which is the boundary of the South Shore Area Plan. I just want to point out to members of the Planning Commission and the public that there's virtually no living population in the South Shore Area Plan. Oliver Park is outside the boundary of the South Shore Area Plan. That will be in the Tahoe Douglas Area Plan. And the only resident population is the mobile home park where we're making the boundary line adjustment. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what the task at hand is, and that's the map, and that's what we're covering. And the other question that I did have for you, or observation that you can clarify if I'm off base, is the property involved in this agenda item, the mobile home park. I believe we have been in contact with the owners. There's two mobile home parks here, and maybe I'm going into too much detail, but one is outside the boundary of the South Shore Area Plan, and that is a individual ownership of, that is not the one that's outside?
So for clarification, the Kingsbury Manor Mobile Home Park, so there's the parcel, and part of it's in and part of it's out. Those are not individually owned. Those are rented. outside of the new proposed boundary, right adjacent to the Kingsbury Mobile Home Park, is the Ponderosa. Those are all individually owned.
Yes.
And in speaking to that, and maybe you're going to get to this, because I know we had discussed it at our pre-PC, is the owner in our discussions did agree to 35 feet height, maximum. With this zoning, the zoning is 56 feet, but the owner did say, and staff supports that he, it's actually in a trust, that they would they felt that way back in 2014, 15, and they still support that at the 35 feet.
Thank you. Much more articulate than
Yeah.
I would have been when trying to
okay.
explain the two mobile home parks that are adjacent to each other. One inside, one outside.
Right.
One individual ownership, one collective ownership by the owner and rented to the people who have their facilities on the lots.
And regarding the 35 feet, that is not a zone change. If the planning commission wanted to suggest that, at that point, we would include and in the zoning map amendment when it's forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners. But it's not something staff would put in as a zoning map to a change for one particular parcel.
Thank you, Kate. So we have the two agenda items, 3 and 4 before us. And if there's no other questions for Kate now, we'll move to public comment, and then we'll come back for discussion and deliberation on these two agenda items. I'll open these two agenda items to public comment. Again, if you have public comment, please step to the microphone, state your name for the record, sign in on the sign-in sheet, and then we will begin your 3 minutes.
My name is Stephen Lording. Objection is hereby made to the application of ordinance 2024-1642 to the parcel because gaming is permitted on the parcel pursuant to ordinance 1980-1 of the NTRPA and the Tahoe Regional Planning Compact, collectively the Compact. Number 2, revision of signage regulations within the T-MU/TC and T-T/HDT overlay zoning districts and updating references to the TRPA Code of Ordinances adversely affects the use of the parcel. Specifically, in order to compete on a fair basis with other casino properties at state line, the allowed square footage, placement, and configuration of signage space as designated in the agenda, will place any gaming business located on the parcel at a distinct disadvantage. This is contrary to the language and intent of the compact, as the signage for the existing gaming will not be required to come under these new regulations. Any parcel with grandfathered gaming rights also must not be required to do so. Implementation of Resolution 2014-R-079 to the parcel places an undue burden upon any development of an existing grandfathered gaming operation on the parcel and ignores the meaning of the grandfathered status. The modification indicated in Table 20.703.080 contained in the meeting materials with respect to densities, heights, setbacks, parking, etc., would reduce and negatively impact parcel development opportunities. The following additional objections are made to proposed changes to Section 20.703.180, signage, paragraph C and all of its subparts, and paragraph 11, because the requirements diminish the marketability of the parcel because of its potential to be used for gaming. And paragraph J in its entirety because it places the parcel at a disadvantage with respect to signage as compared to existing state line gaming properties. To summarize, the owners of the parcel object to any changes to the current sign requirements applicable to the parcel and request that the parcel be exempted from the changes. So in other words, Lakeside Inn had a big sign there, and you guys are trying to say no more signs, and we're grandfathered in with our gaming, so it just seems very unfair. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Chair and Vice Chair, before you start, I beg your indulgence for 3 minutes on each subject. They are distinctly different. I will truncate the two if I have to today, but I will ask staff and the Board of Commissioners not to do what you did today. I know you have the opportunity to combine the both, but the comments are very different.
You may take such time as you need.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, agenda item 3. This should be your mindset. This is about the Tahoe Area Plan and possible MOU issues not understood with the delegation or not from TRPA to Douglas County. Signage regulations were inadvertently omitted, as stated. Douglas County is going to adopt equivalent sign standards to the regional plan as stated in their chapter 38. What redress does the public have if TRPA is the sign permitter, not Douglas County, due to the nature of our MOU? Clarification is necessary as related to our MOU, so you as commissioners and the public better understand that it is confusing. The TRPA shall review all signage associated with a project that has not been delegated to the county through an MOU. This is in their code. The county shall not require a sign permit pursuant to Douglas County Chapter 20.618. That is TRPA code. Our MOU states specific types of projects. I'm most concerned about new proposed projects like what is going on the lakeside property under the commercial tourist accommodation category. MOU states non-residential development within the mixed-use town center, which doesn't exceed 40,000 square feet for new buildable area. If something exceeds 40,000 square feet, Douglas County has no say-so. Correct me if I'm wrong. This isn't just about adopting a code, it's about its effects. I'm asking that some language be recommended to be added to protect the neighboring residential areas that are bordering Kale Drive, Laurel Drive, any residential zone abutting commercial from future sign placement that would impact them by shining into their homes or other potential issues by the placement. Lastly, Douglas County Code 20.7.180F, changeable copy. Reader board signs need better clarification. One sign is allowed instead of a freestanding sign. This applies within the town center mixed-use overlay. The electronic display used to be 4 cycles. Who determined, and I understand the definition, I appreciate staff's definition, and just one slight correction, there is no parking at the event center. Who requested this, and was it analyzed for impacts? Does TRPA accept the resolution change, or did they come forward with the 12? And does this code at TRPA also need to be amended? This needs to come back, in my opinion, with more specificity, showing the comparison of what Douglas County allows in their sign ordinances versus what TRPA could be approving without Douglas County intervention. Thank you on that one. Agenda item 4. This should be your mindset. This is about Tahoe, not the Valley, and the master plan. The language of the findings, which you are looking at, needs to reflect that this does not reflect TRPA. It's confusing to use the verbiage master plan instead of area plan. I'm hoping all you read and understand the concerns of the trailer park. This was approved by Douglas County in 2014 in red line language to put the specific 2 stories or 35 feet. It went to the cutting room floor. If it was approved in 2014, just because TRPA didn't approve it, why isn't Douglas County bringing forward that language? And I ask that you have it added back in. TRPA code and Title 20 are apples to oranges. The findings state master plan applicability. This is not a master plan amendment. It's an area plan amendment, which is confusing when we use master plan language. We should be using TRPA ordinance language calling area plans. With that, I think we need to better understand the differences between Tahoe when we are doing and writing up findings. The proposed zoning text amendments are also consistent with land use and historic preservation policies in the Douglas County Master Plan. Again, I say this isn't applicable, so I'm not sure why we're stating master plan. The zoning text amendment finding C, that the proposed amendment is compatible with the actual and master plan use of adjacent properties. Again, master plan is not applicable. I'll just tidy these up. The findings need to be reworded for clarity to apply to the area plan and be brought back to a future meeting. I appreciate the indulgence, Chair and Vice Chair and all commissioners.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
Yes, David Vogt. Ellie makes a good point about the signage. If the proposed Barton project gets put up across the street from my home, and they put up signs that start shining into my windows, there will be litigation. That is a direct violation of my quiet use and enjoyment of my property. So I think you should be looking at limiting where these signs are going, where they're pointed, how bright they are, what their actual purpose is. She is also correct, there is no parking at the event center. It's at the hotel. Secondly, if you look at that map that was provided, this is not about property right along Highway 50. There are dozens of acres behind those hotels that are also involved. You're talking about increasing the amount of population and use of this area by multiples. Have you done any tests yet or reports to determine how our emergency evacuations are going to work when you've got 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 more people, 3,000 more people in that area? There's only 2 exits out of there. How are you going to look at this? Are you just going to rubber stamp this and say, it'll all work out in the future, somebody else is going to handle this? Those uses for these properties are quite extensive and very commercial, including residential, which I mean by high density usage, multifamily properties. And finally, I'd like to say, I love the fact that the owner of the trailer park is willing to limit his height to 35 feet. I hope that you take that in mind when Barton comes back with their overlay request. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Seeing no additional public comment, then I'll close public comment on this agenda item. I would like to state for the record that I had an ex parte communication this morning with Stephanie Sharp. You have in your supplemental packet materials that she submitted yesterday. And I did answer questions that she had regarding the parcel in question. It is a very confusing situation with the parcels in this area because the parcel numbers do not necessarily correspond now with the existing ownership of the parcels, since Barton did acquire a number of parcels and the other parcels were renumbered. But Mr. Loring spoke during opening public comment, and we do not have jurisdiction over NTRPA, which is the entity that approves or disapproves of gaming for potential use in any of those properties, including the properties that Ms. Sharp contends her clients have ownership in. So that is nothing that we can render an opinion on or base our decision on the signage regulations that apply to all properties in the affected area. So what they have as far as their future use is not to be something based on, whether we would base our decisions on in this instance. And I explained this to Ms. Sharp this morning, but I did want to disclose that I had that discussion with her, and I indicated that she could follow the proceedings today and discuss with her clients any future interest that they have in this matter. So I wanted to put that on the record. And then, Kate, if there were any observations that you had that came up in public comment that you would like to make, we will entertain those before we go to final questions from the members of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Chairman Walder. Since I heard about the parking not once but twice, I was affiliated with putting on an event there. I've been to many events at the Tahoe Event Center. The owners of the parking lot in the back work hand in hand with events at the Tahoe Blue Center. So although the Tahoe Blue Center itself does not have parking, I was referring to the parking lot that is used, I would imagine, 100% of the time when there are events at the Tahoe Event Center. So I apologize if I indicated that they owned a parking lot. It was simply a reference as an example during an event to indicate parking, that lot may be closed or so on and so forth, because I know that lot does fill up.
Thank you very much, Kate. That's absolutely correct. And just as a matter of further clarification, I do happen to have club seats for the Tahoe Blue Event Center, and it's part of the package that I entered into a contract with. We are given parking spaces in that Bally's parking garage, so it is intertwined with the event center, and as would other signs be for celebrity golf or special events that might be held throughout the South Shore area plan. So these signage requirements are important to be included and to be updated for the cycling that is the only word change in the proposed ordinance. So, Paul, would you like to comment on this subject or other matters?
I have actually two comments. One is a disclosure and one's a comment. I also wanted to reveal that I was, as sometimes happens, at the Safeway, which is in Round Hill, asked a number of questions with respect to this particular matter by individuals that I recognize, but I can't tell you their names, but they're neighbors and people that live in the area just north of State Line. And the inquiry was with the environmental checklist. And I responded that this does not have anything to do with the Barton proposed potential hospital development, and neither do the items that are on the agenda for today. So there is a substantial interest, I will tell you, but I demurred because this really isn't within our purview for this matter, and I wanted to disclose those discussions. Second thing is, I live, as a disclosure, about a mile from where the specific plan, the revised plans intend by virtue of a vote. They do not affect me one way or another. It does not affect my value of my property one way or another. But I do exit on Cale Drive. So I just wanted to disclose that to the commission and to the public, that's where I live.
Thank you, Paul. Other questions that people have of Kate or observations on these two agenda items? As I said previously, we will take up the zoning text amendment first and then the zoning map amendment. Both of these findings are on page 70 and 71 of the packet. The actual ordinances that we will vote on are on page 73 and on page 486. So just for the record, that's the way we will conduct business and what we will be acting on. Maureen, did you have comments or questions at this point?
I just have a quick comment. I want to say that I appreciate Ellie's comments about the master plan versus the South Shore area plan. And while the South Shore area plan is pertinent to this one area, the master plan is the overreaching document for Douglas County, and that's the document that trumps everything for the Planning Commission, but I did want to acknowledge her comments.
Thank you. Mark?
So when looking at the extra acreage that we're bringing into the plan for the mobile home park, is there any other distinguishing feature other than on the other side, the mobile home park is owned by individuals, and on this side, it's owned by one individual and the lease of spaces?
That's correct.
Okay, but is there any physical thing that you would say, yes, this is a definite, or is this simply we just want to make the guy's property zoned all the same?
Yes, this is for consistent zoning, because right now he has split zoning, they have split zoning on their one parcel. It's not affiliated with the Ponderosa Mobile Home Park. That would still be outside of the South Shore Area Plan and Town Center as it is today.
Okay, thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
And Kate, I did drive that area a couple of days ago just to refresh my memory of the area, and I do believe there's a fairly large wooden fence that separates the two areas. It's a little bit convoluted because there's not space even to drive in between some of the areas, but you can't get there from here. If that makes sense to you. If other questions or observations, yes.
Yes, thank you. Kate, the 35-foot height limit, 2 stories or 35 feet, you explained that that is not contained in the text of the amendment. Is that correct?
No, staff did not propose, that's unusual for us regardless of what happened 10 years ago. That was proposed. Staff does not recommend restricting height to one parcel, limited height, but the Planning Commission can suggest that, and the owner himself.
Has agreed to
They
that.
are in agreement that they felt 35 feet back then, and they feel 35 feet now. They have their what did they call it? They have a building on site now, so the 35 feet would be relevant to the building they have. I think he said it's like 20 or 25 feet.
Or like a clubhouse or
Yeah,
something?
something, it's like their, the organization, the group's building,
So,
owner's building.
a question I have, I know that the intent was to include the entire property in the South Shore Area Plan. What about excluding the entire property from the South Shore Area Plan? What consequence would that pose?
The staff and as well as the owner does not want to, now you're restricting use that is already provided in the portion of the parcel.
Okay.
So you'd now be stripping that property owner of certain uses that they currently have and say, well, now you can't have that at all on any part of your parcel. So again, since this was proposed back then, the owner hasn't, it was really on our fault. When I first reached out to the owner, they did not even realize this had not gone forward to TRPA and adopted, because I don't think most people really, again, understood the process and when it becomes effective. So they were very gracious. Again, they have no plans. Obviously, they haven't done it in the last 10 years. There is still no plan right now for redevelopment. But they still feel the same way, and again, agreed to the 35 feet.
Okay. I would propose adding that restriction in on the mobile home park to a 35-foot height limit. If in the future they want a redevelopment, they could always come back and request a modification to that standard. I would assume they would possibly also want to modify the zone that they would be applied to that property too at that point.
Yeah, at this stage, what would happen is we would do a footnote in the table indicating that particular parcel. I'm going to defer to our Deputy DA, AJ Hames. AJ, is that correct? Would it simply be a footnote to the existing table for that particular parcel to eliminate it to 35 feet?
Yeah, this is AJ Hames from the DA's office for the record. Much of what is being presented to you now is just a pared down version of what was approved in 2015. So the ordinance as presented today doesn't have a height restriction. That was accomplished in the 2015 ordinance with just a footnote. So if you want to recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve this ordinance with a height restriction on that parcel, then what we would do is we would just add that footnote back in, essentially.
Okay.
So the pleasure of the Planning Commission would be either to add the 35-foot height restriction as a footnote in the table, I think that would go in the table on page 74, or to leave that out and let that go to the discretion of the Board of County Commissioners. It does encumber the property in certain ways, but it also is a protection. So if people want to weigh in pro or con on adding 35 feet, that's subject to a vote on the motion that we will eventually have to approve this.
I'd like to weigh in. I agree with Lori. I think we should footnote it at 35 feet, and if the owner wants to come back, then he can come back.
Any other observations? Paul?
It's a question for Kate with respect to the 35 feet. Because this is a large area that includes a number of different parcels with different uses, it has no precedential value with respect to any other parcel or any other use in that entire area. Am I correct? Only this one little area of the mobile home park.
Kate Morales O'Neill for the record. Are you asking if that height limit would be, yes, it would be just restricted to that one parcel?
Thank you, Paul. That would be the 5-acre parcel, I believe. So is somebody ready to make a motion, or do we have other questions on this? The motion would be on the zoning text amendment first, and then the zoning map amendment. And the zoning map amendment would be where we would add the 35 feet. Bryce, question, comment?
Comment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Bruno. I guess my concern is that we're trying to make the zoning consistent, and now we're limiting this to 35 feet on the small parcel and not on the
Sorry, Chairman. Sorry, Commissioner Klutz, I'm going to halt you in your tracks right there. No, so if the zoning map is improved, the entire parcel would be restricted to 35 feet. So right now, that little small portion is 56 feet, but right now it's kind of irrelevant. I mean, it's more important for consistent zoning. So with this change, that entire parcel, including the small one right now that's within, would be restricted to 35 feet. It wouldn't be 56 feet and 35 feet. Once the zoning map is approved, it would be the entire parcel.
I'm glad you're here to make me look good. Thank you.
If there's nothing else, then I would suggest we start with the zoning text amendment, and that's the relevant portion for signage, for a motion to approve or disapprove that application.
Mr. Chairman, I'll recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they approve ordinance 2024-1642, a zoning text amendment, and ordinance 2024, am I on the right one?
Yes.
1643, a zoning map amendment based on the staff report, presentation's ability to make the required findings, including the footnote to add the 35-foot height restriction.
Were you trying to do both together, or were if you want to do the zoning map amendment first, that's fine. We can do the zoning map amendment first. I thought you were reading both ordinances. That's okay. This is a confusing process. So we have the zoning text amendment, and that motion would be on page 63.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they adopt ordinance 2024-1642 based on the ability to make the required findings, including the 35-foot height restriction, as a footnote.
AJ Hames.
We're close. I think we,
Mr. Chair, if I may.
AJ, yeah.
AJ Hames from the DA's office. Technically, this is the correct place to make that recommendation because the footnote would go in the text of the zoning ordinance. So even though it's more related to the map expansion, this is a perfectly fine place to make that recommendation.
That's why we keep the lawyers in business. You were perfect, Bryce. So we're doing the ordinance 24-642 with the 35-foot height limit in the footnote on the table. And is there a second?
I'll second.
I think Lori got you, Dave, but thank you very much. Moved and seconded for the adoption or recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion carries 7-0. And now we will go to the next motion, which would be essentially item 4. And that would be on page 469. You are correct.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they adopt ordinance 2024-1643, a zoning map amendment based on the ability to make the required findings.
Is there a second? Paul seconds Bryce's motion to recommend approval. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So this motion passes unanimously 7-0. And we will now take an approximately 15-minute break until 25 minutes after 3, and then resume on item 5 and item 6. If everybody is all set to proceed to our next item, we will call the Planning Commission back in order. And this is agenda item number 5, which I will read into the record. For possible action, discussion to approve Master Plan Amendment DP, application DP 24-0135, requesting to amend the Douglas County Master Plan Land Use Map for a 5-acre portion of a 24-acre parcel, changing the future land use designation from agriculture to commercial, and zoning map amendment application DP 24-0136, requesting to amend the zoning map for the same 5-acre portion of the 24-acre parcel, changing the zoning district from A19 agriculture 19-acre minimum parcel size to GC general commercial. The parcel is located north and northeast of the zero-lane road and U.S. Highway 395 intersection behind the business fronting Highway 395. The parcel is within the Minden Community Plan. The property owner is Dorian Fout. Fout 2009 Revocable Trust, APN 1320-32-501-001. Lucille, you have done your good presentation in the packet, and if you can proceed with the materials that you'd like us to review, then we'll consider this item.
Thank you, Chairman Walder. For the record, Lucille Wayo. Happy holidays to all. Today we have 2 items to discuss that will be presented simultaneously but voted on in 2 separate actions. The Master Plan Amendment requires a supermajority vote of 5 to pass, and the zoning map amendment requires a majority vote of 4 or more to pass. Staff is recommending approval to adopt Resolution 2024-01 for the Master Plan Amendment and also recommending approval of the zoning map amendment. Staff believes the findings have been met, and they begin on packet page 938. Today, we have the applicant's representative, Gary Thurm, from Three Castles Engineering, with the presentation for you.
My name is Gary Thurm, for the record. I'm here representing Mr. Dorian Fout. Is there?
Yeah, just tell me when you want me to.
Oh, okay.
Just say next.
All right. So, the location here is, it's actually located in Douglas County, and this parcel is 24 acres currently zoned as agricultural. It's right in between Minden and Gardnerville, just north and east of Zero-Lane Lane, and east of 395, and that's the parcel that's subject to change. Town of Minden parcel, it's a 0.16 acre parcel, accessed off of 395. This is zoned general commercial, also owned by Mr. Fout. And there are no changes proposed as far as zoning goes. It'll remain general commercial. So what we see here is existing land use and zoning. Land use currently is 24 acres of agricultural. And the zoning is also agricultural A19 minimum parcel size. We are requesting a master plan amendment to change from agricultural to commercial on 5 acres on the west side of the 24 acre parcel, going from agricultural to general commercial. And then we're also requesting a zoning map amendment going from A19 to GC or general commercial for that 5 acres. You see a couple pictures here. I don't know if you're all familiar with this area, but right behind Minden Meat and Deli, there's a pasture currently the use is agricultural. Mr. Fotts had cattle out there. And that's just kind of north of Zerolene Lane, that first picture up at the top left, looking from the back of Minden Meat parking lot, and looking south towards Zerolene Lane. And then the next picture over to the right, that's looking at the 0.16 acre general commercial parcel. That is the main access as proposed to the 5 acres, which is adjacent and to the east. And then lower left-hand corner is looking at kind of open higher ground of that 24-acre parcel, looking at back of Hajoka, and then that other one's looking over towards Minden Mill, kind of to the north. So this view, you see the 24-acre parcel and then the 0.16 acre parcel combined with the 5-acre parcel that we're looking to change the zoning for. We will, once, if approved, we'll be doing a boundary line adjustment to combine the 5 acres with the 0.16 acre parcel. You'll notice that the other 19 acres is fully in the floodway. FEMA does not allow construction, nor does Douglas County, in the floodway. We're not proposing to do anything with that portion of the parcel, other than providing emergency access from that parcel to Zerolene Lane. But upon approval of the master plan map amendment and the zoning map amendment, we'll do concurrently a boundary line adjustment, creating 5.16 acres general commercial. And then, so this slide, we're doing consistent with the policies of Douglas County Master Plan. It does bring economic vitality. There is a need, as expressed by the town of Minden and planning staff, that there is a need for more commercial area in the downtown corridor. Adjacent to the general commercial zoning is general commercial zoning. There's to the north and to the south along that strip from Zerolene Lane all the way to Minden Mill. That is all general commercial. There is some service industrial to the north and some SFR 8000 to the east, over near the Martin Slough. So it is a logical extension of services and utilities. There is direct access to 395. It is compatible with the master plan for commercial to the west. And of course, we are preserving the floodway and making sure that we're not altering the floodplain. For the zoning map amendment, that portion of land which has historically been used it as agricultural will now go to, or A19 minimum parcel size will now be incorporated into the general commercial zoning, pending the master plan amendment, of course. There are adequate public facilities available. We've gotten will-serve letters from Minden-Gardnerville Sanitation District, Town of Minden, Charter, Spectrum, NV Energy, Southwest Gas. It is compatible. It is compatible with the adjacent properties to the west, and of course the floodway will remain A19, and the use will remain the same. Site's not located in a receiving area, and it would support the adjacent receiving area to the northeast, Martin Slough. And upon approval of the zoning map amendment and the master plan amendment through Douglas County, the commercial parcel will be approximately 5.16 acres, and that will be annexed to the town of Minden. Town of Minden has, going through their review of this project, has unanimously approved the project to move forward to get to this point. And I'm hopeful that the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will see the same. And of course, the A19 will remain in agricultural use. So this map, I don't know if you all have seen this, but this map was presented by H.F. Dangberg back in 1906. The orientation has not changed. You see the town of Minden Park there in the middle. Lots, when he proposed them were, I think, 25 by 75 feet for all those residential lots. But this is where the V&T Railway ended up coming into town. And you can see there's a little square right there where Lucille's looking at. It's called the Freight Depot. Hence the name of the pasture back there called Depot Pasture. And that, right where that building is where the access road is. Back when I was young, there was, I think, the 76 station right there, kind of just south of the COD garage, or southeast of it. Anyway, I just I thought it'd be nice for you guys to see this. But anyway, this is where the proposed project is going to be as far as the commercial center there. This is an overall map showing the 24 acres, the boundary line adjustment. A couple things to note here, and we can probably see it better on the next slide. Yeah, please. This is orientated so that 395 is at the bottom there. A little 0.16 acre parcel connecting to the new 5 acres, which will be there'll be a boundary line adjustment to bring the two together. What we've proposed here is really just a proposal. The town of Minden really wanted to see, kind of what we were thinking of after meetings with Dorian and just thinking about needs of the community, and as well as discussions that he's had with people in the valley that are looking for commercial space. This is kind of what we came up with. Interesting to note, that when you enter onto the Minden Meat and Deli property, currently, to exit, you either have to kind of go back out a ingress, and so it's easier to just kind of go up and around and back out, which most people do. So we've accommodated that. It'll give Minden Meat and Deli possibility to add a little bit more parking on their site, but also have a safe ingress and egress. We've provided, landscape area. There's kind of a landscape buffer along the east side, which is up on the page now, between the ag parcel where the cattle graze and the commercial. Also notable is that this area is higher in elevation. We're not going to have to do a lot of grading to be able to create parking. And in fact, the three commercial buildings that we show on the left of your screen, or kind of north side, those are all in higher ground in an X-shaded zone, so they're not even on the fringe. So in between that X-shaded zone and the AE floodway is what's called the AE zone, and it's kind of a fringe area. So the difference in elevation is about 2 to 3 feet between there. I don't know that anybody, at least in our lifetime, has seen this area flood. It is in the floodway per FEMA, and it is possible that could change in the future as we approach next year. The flood maps and floodplain is being revised, but nothing on the east side of 395 has really been studied in any detail, and until those come out, we won't really know. But so one last thing, just in the town's and the county's vision, we're trying to connect downtown to other, say, residential areas. The Martin Slough Trail runs along, if you go back one, the Martin Slough Trail follows the Martin Slough along the east side of the property, and then cuts north. And at the north tip of the general commercial area, we've proposed a little park-like setting with a pedestrian bridge to connect to that trail. And obviously you can see the amount of parking that is proposed would facilitate that. I really believe that this will be a good. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. See, you can see the trail kind of winding all the way back there. I stopped it at Alton Anchor's property, right there. But that could be a connection that's made, not too far to grasp anyway. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. That is it.
Okay, then you're done.
All right. Anyway, thank you, and hope you support this zoning map amendment and master plan map amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Anything else to add on your end, Lucille, or should we go to questions?
Just one thing, Gary and I were talking, Gary had mentioned, and he had mentioned it earlier, that area was higher. Do you want to talk about that you can't irrigate that, and that might be another reason for developing this?
Yeah, sure. About 3 years ago, Mr. Fott came to me, and he had purchased this parcel from Bentley with the understanding that there were water rights associated with this parcel. As it turned out, there were not, but we discussed with Bentley family, and we got the water rights deeded back. What had happened, if you go back one slide, at the north end of that triangular parcel, there is, down a little bit, right, yep, right there. At some point, the water rights, their decreed rights off of the East Fork of the Carson River, they were, they changed the place, or the point of diversion and the place of use of approximately 20 irrigated acres. And those were never placed to beneficial use. After discussions with the state engineer, it became evident that those needed to revert back as long as they were deeded to Mr. Fott, which Bentley did. The slope of the land is such that there's 5 to 7 feet difference between the south end of that pasture to the north end. Well, there used to be a diversion structure right at the end of Alton Anchor's parcel. We contacted Alton, asked him if we could have access to that point right there so that we could get water to the pasture. He was not cooperative, but said that after haying season, he'd take a look at it. So I put together plans for the diversion structure. We got application made to the state engineer to get the decreed rights back. And after haying season, presented him with the plans and the map, and he still would not allow us access. So, Dorian's like, well, what do I do here? He didn't really want to take him to court, but at the same time, wanted to get water there so that he could water the pasture. In any case, what we've shown here is a diversion off of the Martin Slough that is on his property, but it backflows to a little reservoir where we can then distribute it. Interestingly, if you go back to that flood zone map, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but see, yeah, right there, yeah. See how, and this, I will say that this is an older flood zone map. It is currently what it looks like, except it looks like it's a little bit adjusted and doesn't follow the current path of the Martin Slough. I do think that the Martin Slough was reconstructed in that area, so that may not be totally accurate. But what doesn't happen is do you have a pointer or something? Here, water flows down the Martin Slough, and it keeps going this way. And it goes like that. It used to go like that. So anyway, this is not how the floodwaters are going to come. They're not going to come like this and go into here. They're going to go down this way. And then they're also going to overtop the Zero Lean Lane. Anyway, on the entire 5 acres that we've proposed is out of the floodway and is high and dry. And that will be maintained, and so will the agricultural use.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll move now to questions that members of the Planning Commission have for the applicant or for staff. Mark.
Certainly. So I don't know if this is for the applicant or the staff, but what's that blue line running down the middle of your 5 acres? Is that a stream? Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah, that's the demarcation line between the X shaded and the AE zone. So so you have 2 AE zones here. You have the AE zone and you have the AE floodway. So the elevation drops from the X shaded, which is west of that line, or west northwest.
So where your pointer is X shaded, which is once in 100 or 500?
500.
And then on the other side of the line, it's 1 in 100.
Yes.
Okay. So where you're planning to put your buildings, are you going to have to bring in fill? Or are you just going to pretty much leave that alone?
If any, it would be on that commercial building on the south side, and that would be in an AE zone. We tried to keep all the parking and the trail and the landscaping, most of that east of that line. There's nothing that says that you can't build in an AE zone, you just can't build in an AE floodway. So we would have to make application, produce an elevation certificate for any structures in the AE zone. We don't need to do an elevation certificate for structures in the X shaded zone. There are special requirements for construction, and that'll be made down the road when we start planning for those buildings.
Okay. My next question is on packet page 936. There are some charts there because, as you all know, to get a master plan amendment, you have to demonstrate a need. And they say they're as of Douglas County 2020 master plan. Do we know how many acres Minden has left? I mean, they started with 158, and this thing shows they have 15 acres left. Is that accurate?
For the record, Lucille Rayo, I took this chart from the master plan, so the information should be accurate as of the 2020 master plan.
Okay. And then Gardnerville has 102 vacant acres. So I
I'm
guess,
having trouble hearing you, I'm sorry, with the noise in the hallway.
oh. So Gardnerville currently has 102 acres. So we have 15 in Minden and 102 in Gardnerville. So my question is, how can we demonstrate a need if we still have that many acres of commercial space available to build on?
I think between the town asking and approving it, I think that by itself, as well as, I mean, we've substantiated it in the staff report just by what the master plan has to say about commercial. So staff believes that, extra commercial is needed in the downtown area. When you say 12 acres in 102 acres in Gardnerville, are we talking down in Service Industrial? I'm not exactly sure. Are we talking out in East Valley area? I'm not quite exactly sure where those 102 acres are.
Well,
Are they in the downtown area? They could
I
be
don't know
down
the
by
answer to
Pine Nut.
so
most
can you
likely
tell
down
me
by
the
Pine
answer to
Nut.
that?
I'm sorry.
Could you tell me the answer to that? I mean, is there more than just the 15 acres in Minden that is close to it? Is there other commercial land located close to this site? And when I say close, I mean 3 or 4 miles.
Well, for the record, Lucille Rayo, Buckeye Road, yes, we talked about that. There's some commercials, probably more commercial coming. We have some proposals coming ahead, but at this point in time, staff and the town do believe there is a need.
And demonstrate a need.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Other questions from members of the Planning Commission? Dave?
Yeah, not a question, but I think this is a great location for a commercial area. You know, it's very centralized in Minden itself, where there is a lot of activity going on in that area right now. So I think it's a good location. I would like to see this go through. I think you could do a great job there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Bryce?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I first saw this, it was kind of dead on arrival for me because it's a master plan amendment. But the reality of it is we have to take each of these as they come. And I do believe, you know, I can't speak to the need per se, but I do believe that it's a good use of that land. I can appreciate from an agriculture perspective how difficult that piece of property is. So for me, I would be really concerned if it's true ag and we're losing it and we can't, you know, we can't use it from an open space perspective. But for me, I think that's a great use of that particular property. I'm always worried about, well, we grow that and then next thing you know, we grow this, and you know, over the course of the next 20 years, we just keep growing it, and we just keep taking more ag land. So that's a concern of mine. But again, I'll take each of these as they come up, and so I won't be here sitting here in 10 years. That's for sure. At least here. I hope I'm sitting somewhere else. But so I think it's a great use of that particular piece of property.
Thank you, Bryce. Other questions for the staff before we move to public comment? Paul?
One question, Lucille, is the recreational area, or at least the adjoining trails that go to an area that is for sitting, as I understand, and observation. Are those in the, and I didn't see it, are those in the conditions of approval for this?
For the record, Lucille Rayo, there are no conditions of approval, really. You can't condition a master plan amendment. But what Gary was explaining today was really a concept of what they want to do with the land. And we thought it was important for you, as well as the board, to understand what's going to happen with this property, because that's usually the question. Why should I approve this if I don't know what you're doing with it? And why do we want to take ag land away? Because that's also important to everyone in this valley. I wanted Gary to prove the point that that portion of the land is hard to irrigate. I'm not sure if that really came across, but that was the whole point of the diversion, and that it's hard to irrigate, and there's better use of that property. And so that concept of connecting to the Martin Slough is a really neat idea, especially if they do a restaurant out there with some outdoor seating. So he really was just trying to give you a concept of what could happen on this property going forward if this was approved. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I thank you because Gary and Lucille, the one other thing I look at with master plan amendments, not only is it really justified, is there a community benefit for changing the master plan? And those kinds of things help your cause. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Lori?
So Lucille, could you explain the process that they would go through going forward? Would that necessarily come back to the Planning Commission, or would that be a staff approval, or could you go through that process, please?
So if this was recommend approval now to the board, then the board, hopefully the board approves it. The next step for them would be to, design review is the process they would need to go through, and that's staff level for any kind of construction, site improvement permit for parking lot, any mitigation if there was anything in the flood zone, elevation certificates and whatnot, flood studies if he was going to do anything in the flood zone area. Yeah, and that's basically it. So no, would not be coming back to you.
And I have one more follow-up. We just made an amendment to ensure that one parcel was consistent. And I see an APN, but I also hear that you're saying that you're going to do a future parcel boundary adjustment. Is that in process, or is that, this APN is obviously a placeholder number? Is that what we're seeing here?
For the record, Lucille Rayo. So we have two parcels. So we have the 24-acre parcel and then what is it, 0.016? 0.16. It's like a drive aisle, really, if you were to go there, Alpha 395. It's really just this little portion right here. This already is zoned general commercial. So if they do a boundary line adjustment between this parcel and this 24-acre parcel to make this 5-acre parcel together with this 0.16 parcel, then that's not going to happen until if they get approval, because otherwise they need to have a parcel that there's no point in doing it. Yeah.
Thank you, Lori. If there are no other questions from members of the Planning Commission at this point, we'll go to public comment on this issue. Is there public comment on agenda item number 5? Seeing no public comment on this item, then I'll close public comment. We'll come back to the Planning Commission for final questions or thoughts, and then we'll move to 2 motions. Again, this is a master plan amendment, so we would need to adopt the first resolution approving the master plan amendment, and then if that would receive a 2/3 vote, then we would move to number 2 for the zoning map amendment. Correct me if I'm wrong, AJ or Lucille. And the appropriate findings are in the packet, starting on page 938 and moving forward. So other questions, observations, or a motion? Maureen.
Okay, I have a couple comments. I would like this to come back to the Planning Commission. I like when projects come in like this and then they go to design review, we don't see them again. So we have no idea what's happening. I don't like this process. But anyway, that's my opinion.
We might have some openings in the planning division.
But I know it's going to go to design review. I know Courtney's going to be working with you to design the parking so that it'll have nice drainage and it'll be minimizing the asphalt. So it'll look nice, it'll complement the ag, and it'll help with cleaning the water that drains from the property so it's not polluting the agricultural parcel. And you said that you were going to be providing access from the ag parcel, emergency access on Zero Lanes, so I'm confident there will be 2 exits on the property, one from, is it Depot Road? And then one to Zero Lane. So there'll be 2 exits. And this is what I like infill. I don't like when development goes to the outskirts and builds on fresh land out in the edges because they don't want to do infill. And thank you. I appreciate that very much. So,
Thank you, Maureen. Paul.
Lucille, I'm not doubting, as you told me, that there are no conditions of approval that could potentially place on what we're doing here. to provide the community benefit. Is there any other way we could do it? I mean, I read in 6A, but it has nothing to do with the benefit to the community that I was speaking of and that Gary spoke to. This is in the north end of the property that we were just talking about.
For the record, Lucille Rayo. So you're asking if you can condition this. I don't believe you can condition this, but we can check with AJ Hams.
Is there any way we could ensure that the community benefit results from this change in the master plan?
AJ Hames from the DA's office for the record. No, I agree with Lucille. This is something that you, when you're making the determination of whether this is a benefit to the community, you are to restrict your analysis to the zoning and the map amendment itself, not any future development. We're not at this time considering any future development. You have a concept, but that may be just a concept and may never actually come about. So really, you just want to focus your decision on the use itself. The zoning designation itself, not any proposed or conceptualized use.
Thank you. I then share the same, a bit of concern that Commissioner Casey had, that we never see this again. In other words, as we discuss it, sounds pretty good in anticipation and concept of what the presentation was. But that may, as you've indicated to me and Lucille did, never come about. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Are we prepared for a motion on the master plan amendment? Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For what it's worth, I think the one thing, and excuse me if this is obvious, is that it is conditioned to commercial. And I think that's important, is that it's not going to be an industrial building. It's not going to be residential. It's going to be commercial. And I would think in the design review that it's got to be compatible with the existing areas. And so there are some conditions, via the zoning, but your point is valid.
Thank you. Motion. Who wants to step forward on page 930 with the master plan recommended motion? Maureen.
I move that we adopt Resolution 2024-01 approving Master Plan Amendment Application DP 24-0135 because the findings required by DC 20.608.040 have been met and recommend approval of zoning map.
If you could withhold, Maureen, we'll just take the first one first. AJ, is that the proper procedure here? Yes. So
Okay.
we'll do the master plan amendment first. Is there a second to Maureen's motion?
Second.
Bryce seconds the motion to approve the master plan amendment. Is there discussion?
Second.
I think Bryce got in on a second, but thank you, Dave. Maureen made the motion, Bryce made the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. And I'd cite finding B. I don't think we demonstrated a clear need for additional zoned commercial property.
Thank you, Mark. Mark refers to finding B in the packet on page 938. So the vote on this is 6 in favor and 1 against, and the motion would be approved. And now we would go to motion number 2 on the zoning map amendment.
I
Maureen.
hope I can say it smoothly because you stopped me and I was on a roll.
You were.
I recommend approval of zoning map amendment application DP 24-0136 to the Board of County Commissioners, subject to the conditions set forth in the staff report because the findings required by DCC 20.610.050 have been met.
Is there a second?
Second.
Dave seconds Maureen's motion to approve the zoning map amendment. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Paul, do you have
Just
discussion?
one question. Can we stretch the meaning of 20.100.020 to, which is a general policy statement on adequate facilities, to include the benefit to the community created by the zoning amendment. It's a condition of approval 6A from Title 20.100.020. Or is that a stretch, District Attorney?
AJ Hames from the District Attorney's Office. The condition listed there is, it's almost more of a reminder than a condition. They have to comply with that code requirement regardless of whether or not the condition is imposed. There really isn't a mechanism to enforce a specific developmental condition like there would be for, say, a tentative map where you could require certain improvements before they're permitted to file or record their map. Here, once the zoning is down, it's down. And so that's why conditions aren't typically imposed, other than maybe a sort of throwaway condition like this one where we're essentially just referencing the code.
You read my mind. I was trying to extend it, and the answer is no, you can't. Thank you.
Your referencing the code section will appear in the minutes. If there are no further discussion, then we will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Mark is opposed.
Because if I didn't vote for the master plan amendment, I'm not going to vote for the zoning map amendment.
And your objections are so noted to follow the objections on the master plan amendment. So on this motion, it's 6 votes in favor, 1 vote against, and the motion is approved. Thank you very much, Lucille. We'll move on now to agenda item number 6. And I will read this into the record. This is for possible action, discussion on ordinance 2024-1645, a zoning text amendment, DP 24-0224, amending various chapters of Title 20 of the Douglas County Code in order to implement the requirements of NRS 278.253 by A, designating zoning districts in which a tiny house may be located and classified as an accessory dwelling unit, and B, designating zoning districts in which a tiny house is allowed to be located and classified as a single-family residential unit. Kate, you are prepared. You have prepared this agenda item, and we will have your presentation and then ask for questions.
Thank you, Chairman Walder. Kate Marolis O'Neill, Planning Manager, Community Development. So I just wanted to give a brief presentation on this item. Although it is required by us to implement tiny houses into our code per NRS, I did want to just give a little brief overview. So the first thing is what constitutes a tiny house? So by definition in the 2018 International Residential Code, which is on page 84 of your packet, it defines a tiny house as a dwelling of 400 square feet or less of floor space excluding lofts. So that's the definition of a tiny house. This slide here just gives a synopsis of the NRS statute, and pages 988 to 999 compiles the inclusion of tiny houses and the allowed zoning districts for accessory dwellings, as well as single-family dwellings in Title 20. We really kept it simple for A and B is what we've implemented of the statute. Basically, where a manufactured home is allowed, we've implemented that for a tiny house. There are some specific requirements after January 1st of 2025 that a tiny house would have to be on a permanent foundation. So the reason I included C, we didn't implement it at this time, but staff is interested in tiny house parks in the future. One of the reasons we started to do a lot of research, and this was kind of the direction staff wanted to go. But in order to develop all of those standards, it was really more time consuming than we realized, because you have to implement the roads and the open space and how does that work, and if they have a garage and do they have a parking area versus a driveway and so on and so forth. But we did do a lot of research on this, and we believe these parks with specific development standards, including being built on permanent foundations, could be a solution to our attainable housing, affordable housing problem that, as I mentioned in a previous item, I don't think that's going away anytime soon. Tiny house parks are becoming kind of more popular across the nation, moving more away from mobile home parks and getting to more these tiny house parks that are built on permanent foundations. So these are just a few picks in our research that I really like the one with the trees and the pine trees, because that kind of reminded me of our area. But the one in the top left, that is just outside of Atlanta. And that was a tiny house park that was opened in 2023. And it's 29 homes, and it sold out in 2 days. And the price range was from $190,000 to $230,000. So it's just, again, they're smaller homes, but staff feels if we can create development standards that are very structured to how they look, I think they could be a good implementation in the future for some available parcels to be able to include these type of homes for workforce housing, or your grandchildren or your children that are getting into a trade or coming home from college and they want to come back to Douglas County. It would be a great starter home. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that staff is going to try to look at this in the future and try to bring back, look into these tiny house parks. But it's just a pipe dream at this moment, but I did want to include that in the presentation. So in conclusion, staff does recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners of Ordinance 2024-1645 based on the NRS requirement to implement tiny houses, and the findings for the zoning text amendment can be met. The actual recommended motion is on page 978 of your packet. And thank you again for your time, for listening to me again today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Kate. Good presentation. Questions for Kate on this, Paul, and then Dave, we'll go to you next after Paul.
The restrictions, not restrictions, but the design and other requirements that you may place on tiny houses, can they extend to what we see in the picture, which is something more akin to the upper left-hand picture, which is more akin to CC&Rs, obviously, that you can't put stuff outside the house and store things and bicycles and every other damn thing. And then you have a designated parking area that has to be maintained, which I suppose is a homeowner association. I don't know. Those are the kinds of things I'd love to see, so that the tiny house proposals that come don't become tiny ghettos at a later date.
Thank you, Commissioner Bruno. Yeah, that's why the tiny house parks, we didn't bring that forward, because we want to make sure when we do bring that forward, if and when, we want those standards set. Like, this is what it would have to look like. This is how much, like, we have to figure out the percentage of open space and how that would work, and the parking, and so on and so forth. You know, there are standards we've set even in here for, using as a single-family residence. It has to be in a manufactured home overlay. But, your roof has to be pitched, 212, not the flat. So we even incorporated now some standards that we'd like to see for those tiny houses that are implemented as an accessory dwelling or a single-family dwelling.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Dave.
Yes. Where are you going to define the tiny house? What square footage?
It's based on the definition that I mentioned in the beginning. So it's 400 square feet or less of floor space, excluding lofts.
Okay.
So that's the definition we have to go by.
Okay. I was looking that up today, and they mentioned 400 square feet and also 600 square feet. So I wanted to make sure I knew which one we were talking about here. We're going to treat these as a single-family residence. So if The reason I'm asking these questions is because I live in the Ranchos and I'm going to be on the GRID in a month. So, like for instance, the Ranchos has a lot of half-acre parcels. And we already have problems with infrastructure getting in and out of the Ranchos, etc. And so I'm concerned that we maybe do not put these in the Ranchos because we have problems with water and a lot of other issues. And we just approved 85 houses in that area, 84, I guess they subtracted one. So I'm concerned about these being overly used in the Ranchos.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson, for your question. So single-family housing would only be allowed if you're going to use a tiny house as a single-family dwelling. That can only take place in a manufactured home overlay zoning district. So for instance, there is, MH mobile home manufactured housing overlay district up towards Carson on the left-hand side. That's an overlay district. So someone could come in and they could utilize a parcel and be a single-family residential. Accessory dwelling would be allowed, but in A19 and FR19 or 40, and then half acre or greater. So those smaller lots in the ranches, the 8,000, the 12,000 would not be allowed as an accessory dwelling. But if you did have a half acre, keep in mind, they could right now build a 200 square foot shed, so a 400 square foot, accessory dwelling. Now they would have to be able to have the utilities, and they'd have to be accessible, so it would be a case by case where they're located, can they hook up to utilities, so on and so forth. But we kind of mirrored where a manufactured home is allowed. We didn't want to really stray too far off course of what that is because they're very similar at this stage.
Okay.
Does that help?
That does, and they would have to hook up to the utilities that are there and pay a connection fee, etc.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that helps me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dave. Other questions for Kate on this agenda item? If we have no other questions at this point, then we'll move to a public comment on agenda item number 6. If you have public comment, please sign in on the mic and state your name for the record, and then we will hear your public comment. I'm sorry, if you can refrain where we have somebody making public comment.
For the record, Jeannie Shizuru. I find this, necessary because the NRS created this tiny home. But we have an accessory dwelling unit on one of our properties. And I just, even when David was studying this and telling me a few things about it, it just seems that the number of questions and concerns is just astronomical, just keeping it straight between the accessory dwelling unit rules and then a manufacturing home overlay or SFR 1/2 acre. I mean, I can't even articulate the complications that this opens up. I can see why you need to do something because the NRS says that, but a tiny home in the way that our rules currently exist, I really don't know how this is going to work. There's a manufacturing overlay behind Walmart, I believe. Is that a place where you'd have these little tiny homes in a smaller lot than a half acre? I can't grab my hands around what you're actually approving. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Seeing no additional public comment, then we'll close public comment. Come back to the Planning Commission. We'll close public comment and bring it back to the Planning Commission. Kate, did you have observations that you wanted to make before we wrap this item up?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Walder. Kate Morales O'Neill. Just to clarify just due to public comment. It is very clear, the page numbers that I specified in here, what is allowed and what isn't allowed, the development standards for accessory dwelling and a single-family housing. So there's the 10 pages and the variations of standards. We'd be here quite long if I was going through all the different development standards. But it is very clear. So someone coming in to want to build, they have to follow code, and these inclusions in code are very clear what you can and cannot do and where you can and cannot do it.
Thank you, Kate. Other questions from the members of the Planning Commission, or if we're prepared to go to the motion, it's on page 976, is the same one as 978. There's two, one on each page, but it's a simple motion recommending approval of the ordinance in question. Bryce.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they approve ordinance 2024-1645 based on the ability to make the required findings.
Second.
Bryce has made the motion, Maureen has seconded it. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So this motion is approved 7-0. Thank you very much. That concludes our agenda items. We do have closing public comment, and then I think there are members of the Planning Commission that want to make public comment. So I will now open this to closing public comment. Is there any closing public comment?
Yes, you're welcome. Good afternoon. Members of the Planning Commission, Jennifer Davidson, County Manager for the record. It is a pleasure to be here today to recognize and thank Planning Commissioners Neddenriep and Nelson for their service as their term on the Planning Commission comes to a close. Mr. Neddenriep and Mr. Nelson, your dedication, wisdom, and leadership have left an indelible mark on this community and on the many projects and decisions that have shaped the future of our county. Your thoughtful approach, commitment to Douglas County Master Plan, and passion for smart, sustainable planning ensure that the decisions made during your tenure have consistently prioritized the well-being of our residents. Effective land use and planning is never easy, as you know. It requires balanced vision, practicality, and public interest. And yet you brought patience and insight to every discussion and every decision. Your service has helped to ensure responsible growth to foster a vibrant and sustainable future for generations of Douglas County residents to come. While your formal role on the Planning Commission is coming to an end, I have no doubt your service to this community will continue in new ways. Mr. Nelson, I want to additionally take this opportunity to congratulate you on your recent election to the Gardnerville Ranchos General Improvement District Board. I have no doubt you will serve in that capacity as faithfully as you have served as a commissioner and planning commissioner. On behalf of the entire county, the Board of County Commissioners, and all of us here today, thank you. Thank you both for your professionalism, your expertise, and your unwavering service to this community. You've set a high standard for those who will follow in your footsteps. Please join me in giving Mr. Nelson and Mr. Neddenriep, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, a round of applause and in expressing our gratitude for their service on the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much. Is there additional closing public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Dave, I'd be happy to recognize you. I have some comments to make as well, and I believe others may, but please.
Yeah, I just want
You
to
have the
say
floor.
thank you to all of you here. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And I hope we're all friends.
Thank you. Mark.
Yes, I have a few comments. You know, it was truly fun to work with this exceptionally talented board and staff. Everyone brought something different to the table, and I know that I will very much miss this. I am leaving for personal reasons to enjoy warmer winters somewhere else, but I wanted to say a little bit about each of the commissioners here. As I look down the row, I see Lori first. I'll never forget the Verizon cell tower that they wanted to place in Minden. I didn't think it was an appropriate place, and I was having a difficult time forming the correct words to express my thoughts. And then you said the perfect phrase. That location is the gateway to Minden. And the first thing a visitor is going to see is a cell tower when they enter Minden. What an excellent choice of words. Paul, when I heard the BOCC appointed the lead attorney from a Fortune 500 company, I'll be honest, I was a little afraid that you might be aloof and try to dominate some of the discussions. Well, those fears were quickly set aside, as I distinctly remember when Kate, and there she is, introduced herself to you. We were in the Minden Inn, room 306, and she introduced you as, "Hey, Bruno." Not, "Hello, Paul." "Hi, Mr. Bruno." It was simply, "Hey, Bruno." You calmly took that introduction in stride, and at that point, I realized we'd all get along with you. You're never frustrated, your thoughts are exceptionally organized and always on point. If I ever needed someone to negotiate deal terms, you'd be the one I'd want to pick. David, you've always wanted the best for Douglas County. That's always forefront in your mind. And what I admire most about you is that you always voted with your heart. Maureen, well, my friend, and I hope it's okay I call you my friend. It's been an honor and a joy to serve with you. You were always prepared, your questions were on point, and you always thought of questions that I'd never thought of. I know you have a great desire to make Douglas County the best place it possibly can be. So if you ever want to run for an elected office, know that you have my vote and my support. You are the model of what a commissioner should be. Bryce, you're very methodical. You always go down a checklist to determine if the applicant has met every one of the criteria. You explain the reasons for your vote to the public in a very empathetic manner, telling them the reasons for your vote, and in fact, it doesn't matter what you think personally, you had to go down and follow the checklist. Your knowledge of building is exceptional, and if I had to give you a nickname, it'd be Judge. It'd be just like playing Monopoly. Roll the dice, pass go, you checked all the boxes, $200. You don't check them, go to jail. Kirk, first of all, I want to thank you for being the chairman for many years. You've done an excellent job as both a chairman and a commissioner. Don't be surprised if several years from now I forget your name and I just yell, "Hey, Senator," because that's what you remind me of. You're very calm, you have a silver tongue, understand the issues, hold your comments until everyone else has spoken. You respected every speaker during public comment, even if you didn't agree with them. And best of all, you thank them for their opinion. You were always supportive of staff and understood the hard work and task that staff had to do. And for staff, AJ, Kate, Tom, and the rest of you, Douglas County is truly lucky to have you guys. I want to thank you because you made my job a lot easier, enjoyable, and actually fun. I truly enjoyed working with you, and I wish you all the best success.
Very well spoken, Mark. Thank you. I have some concluding comments that I would like to make. I want to extend my great appreciation to a number of people who have assisted the Planning Commission in the past year. First and foremost, I want to commend the staff of Community Development and the outstanding leadership of Director Tom Dallaire. He has been ably assisted by Andrea, Kate, Lucille, Colleen, and Linda. Thank you one and all for your dedication to the Planning Commission, your clients, and the public. Thank you also to the county engineer, Jeremy, and his staff, and the VHR program manager, Ernie Strelo, and his staff, GIS staff, IT staff also provided valuable assistance. We are ably served by the excellent work of AJ Hames and the district attorney staff. Their efforts to help us comply with federal, state, and county law, as well as guide us in procedural matters, is essential to meet our objectives. SOSU TV works long and hard before and after our meetings, and we appreciate their efforts, even the behind the scenes. I want to give a special thank you to our clerk, Amy Bergens, and her skilled and dedicated staff who spend countless hours to provide an accurate record of our meetings. Each of them does their work with great professionalism and attention to detail. Thank you, Michelle. You've always been an excellent staff member, and we appreciate it. The county manager and her staff, especially the public information team, provide us with assistance in many ways, and we thank them. We should also thank Kurt Hildebrand and the Record Courier for providing excellent information about our proceedings, enabling the public to be aware of our meetings and our actions. Finally, our work could not be done without the dedication and hard work of each of you serving on the Planning Commission. Thank you for your efforts, your skill, and your commitment to producing good decisions that benefit Douglas County. I want to individually recognize the service of Commissioners Dave Nelson and Mark Nedenrep, both of whom will be leaving us. Congratulations, Dave, for your election to the Gardnerville Ranchos General Improvement District. We appreciate the valuable insights you brought to the Planning Commission, and we know you will continue your mission of public service in the coming years. And Commissioner Nedenrep, we thank you for your tireless efforts to make Douglas County a better place to live and work. You raised insightful questions and thoughtful observations on many important agenda items over your years of service. We wish you and your family the best and hope you will continue, sometimes from afar, to provide us with your unique wisdom. Thank you, everyone, and I'm happy to entertain other comments or call the meeting adjourned. Maureen.
And I know I'm a big sap, but David, we danced time to time over the years, but it's been fun. And I wish you the very best, and I know this is not the last you'll see of me or I'll see of you. And Jeannie, you're going to have a handful with him, but keep him in line. And Mark, I know you told me you're only going to be a phone call away, but it won't be the same. After 6 years of you being right here next to me, I'm going to miss you terribly. And you are my friend, and I love you dearly. And with Jacques, we've been the three musketeers for open space. And your knowledge and your support and your love over these years has been tremendous. You've helped me through some tough times over this last year, and I will be calling. I can't go any farther.
Thank you,
And
Maureen.
thank you, Tom, for your support. Kate, Andrea, AJ. It has been a tough year, and you all, I carry you with me. Thanks.
Thank you. Bryce.
Dang it, Maureen, don't get me crying. Mr. Nelson, I have tremendous respect for you. I agree with Mark that everything you've done because you believed it was the right thing to do, and this county is better for it. And the fact that you want to continue to serve is admirable. It's tough to be up here. It's even tougher to be at the county commission. The ranchos need a lot of help, and you're the right man to do it. And so just know that I learned a lot from you, and I have tremendous respect for you. I'm going to call you Mr. Nedenrip because you deserve it. I learned a long time ago that a mentor is somebody that never knew they were a mentor. You don't tell somebody you're a mentor. You either are or you aren't. And you are. You're a mentor to me. These 5 years have been incredible. I had no idea you were leaving because I wasn't here at the last meeting, or else I could have wrote 2 pages. But just know that every day when I show up here to do this job, that I will try to lead by your example. And so I thank you. You're not only an amazing advocate for this community, you're an incredible citizen of it. And so I wish you all the best. Bottoms up in Arizona, and have a good time.
Thank you, Bryce. If there are no additional comments, then I will consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you.